Good evening. I think it's 7 o'clock now. I'd like to call this meeting of the Urbana City Council to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Barnes? Here. Mr. Bowersox?
Present.
Ms. Shenoweth?
Present.
Mr. Lewis?
Present.
Mr. Roberts?
I'm here.
Mr. Smythe? Ms. Stevenson?
Present.
Mayor Pressing?
Here. First item is approval of the minutes of the previous meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Lewis, seconded by Ms. Barnes. Any additions or corrections to the minutes? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Are there any additions to the agenda? Okay, petitions and communications. I have 4 people who would like to address the council. If anyone else would like to speak, would you fill out one of these little cards, and then we'll give you 5 minutes, up to 5 minutes. Okay, the first one I have here is Tyler Kratt. Would you please come forward and state your name and address? And you have 5 minutes. Just have a seat at the front there. And the microphone is the little black mouse-looking creature.
Tyler Kraft. I stay at 1204 West Hill Street in Urbana.
Okay. And you, sir?
My name is Patrick Thompson. I stay at 809 Winchester Drive. I brought the young men in today. This is the first time they ever been to something like this, so this is a big step for them. But we're kind of here today to talk about some issues as far as, you know, a community center over in the Urbana area. And these young men are in support of trying to have something in the community, and so that they can be involved in the process of, you know, having some more positive things in the community. So, again, this is the first step, big step for them, so I'm going to kind of let them talk.
Okay.
Yeah, we basically feel we would like, you know, something like a community center, you know, the Urbana district area from around King School, because, you know, we just saw in the paper that they're trying to, you know, shut the little mini park down on the corner of what's that, Beasley and Goodwin, on the corner of Beasley and Goodwin. And, you know, a lot of us, you know, find that as a place we could just sit and hang out. And with that going, we won't have no place, you know, to really hang out, you know, with a lot of friends around the neighborhood. So with, you know, a community center, we'll have a place to be at, stay off the streets, you know, and hopefully they give us jobs, because a lot of us around there without jobs, you know, because a lot of us have felonies, and most jobs they're not trying to give well, blacks in the minority rate, you know, they don't want to give us jobs with felonies. So with a community center, they give us a break, keep us off the streets, you know, less trouble for some people, you know, less police callings and all that.
Anyone have any questions? Danielle.
Thanks for coming to talk to us today, Tyler. A question I have is, we've had a conversation about a community center for, I don't know how long it's been, at least it's been, 20 years. We've had a conversation about a community center in the King School neighborhood. So the questions that have come up that I think we'd like to hear from the community about are, if it was tied to the public school there, how would that work? Would you prefer it to be basically the issue is who's going to operate it. The city has built up funds in the past to build a community center, but the issue has been who's going to operate the community center. Is it the park district? Is it the school? I don't think the city is necessarily up for it, but to try to figure out how we're going to keep the funds to, you know, keep the lights on, keep the power on, et cetera. And so if you have some input as to who you think would be both the location of the place and also who you think should operate the place, that would be useful information for us.
Yeah, we used to, a couple years back, we used to have teen night at King School, you know, and it kept a lot of us off the street, because like from like 7 to 9, we could be in there, you know, playing games, playing basketball, because the park closes at a certain time, so we ain't allowed to play basketball, be at the park, you know. And if they could bring something like that back, that'd be good, because, you know, for a certain hour, it'd be a job. It'd be somewhere like a Boys and Girls Club or something, you know. It'd keep us busy from a certain time, so then when we get done, we, you know, go right to the house, go right in the house instead of being out running the streets at a dark time. And it's a lot of adults like him, for instance, you know, who he could probably help run it, you know, being there supervising. It's a lot of adults older than us that be willing to do that. You know, we just got to bring them in, you know, to speak on it.
You know what happened with the basketball night at King School?
Nah, because it was like it was really funded by some of our baseball coaches from Douglas. They had it up there,
Okay.
and they did it for a little bit, but I guess the funders weren't right, so they shut it down.
So it was related to first string when you say it was the baseball coaches? It was first string related? Okay.
Anyone else? Brandon?
Yeah, Tyler, thanks for coming. I was wondering what you thought about the mini park and whether you felt like the little mini park across from the school was good to have and a more positive place for the community, or bad to have, and because of some of the things that happened there, it made sense to not have it. What's your take on that space and how it's different from the other park, and you know why there's a whole bunch of space at King Park, but the same sort of dynamics don't seem to happen there as happen at the mini park?
It's good and bad because like it's good for some of us in the community because people used to seeing us there, you know. But then when they see new faces, they be like, oh, bring more people around. And then the incident that just happened, you know, that's basically why I feel that that's where they put it in the paper is like it's a bad thing because we sit there, you know. And I be over there all the time, you know. And then when I go there, I pick up my niece from school, you know, and I sit on the corner and wait for a little bit till she get there. Because we used to be on the one with the cement, that had the cement on it, on the corner of Fairview and Goodwin. But then the police would tell us that it's private property. Unless you wait for the bus, you can't be there. So we moved to the other one, and then they called it a mini park. And then nobody never harassed us or nothing about it, you know, until this incident happened. Then that's when, you know, police come around, and they say, you know, it's not good to be right here, you know. But then we ain't sitting here, you know. In the other corners, it looked too suspect because of somebody's house right there, right on the corner. We don't want to be standing right by somebody's house, and, you know, talking or whatever, and then somebody come outside like you know, you're too loud by our house or whatever, whatnot, you know. So I don't really want the corner to go anywhere. I want the mini park to stay there, you know, because without that, it's gonna be more people going to jail because the people younger than us, they're gonna want to be out there sitting around, having fun, you know, doing whatever, talking. And then the police come up, say it's trespassing, you know, but really it shouldn't really be trespassing. That's part of the community. It been there, you know, for some years now, you know. So we done grew attached to it, and without that, you know, it'll just bring probably a downfall to the community for us, you know.
Okay, thanks.
Charlie Smythe.
I guess, Tyler, one thing I'd be interested in is getting some of the different people who have been involved in talking about the community center there together again, and that might be something that you and your friends could get started rolling. I'm not sure who those people were. I'm sure we could probably figure it out from the records, but I think it's probably, I know that the UCAN neighborhood group would be one place to touch base with, as I think some of them were involved. And maybe we can reconstitute a group to start looking at this again. But I would ask that you start and maybe call one of us later this week, and I know who some of the people are who you could contact and start the ball rolling. And we could go from there.
Dennis Roberts.
So I guess now I don't really probably know the dynamics of evenings in your neighborhood as well as some people do, but I've often wondered whether the purchase of an existing building that's in the neighborhood area would be of any use as a community center, and that would be the family video building that's now up for sale or had been abandoned. Now that's in it's a couple blocks away. It's on Lincoln.
Yeah.
Is there anything about the location at King's School that is of interest to you, or would you go a couple blocks and go to events, or would you go to that corner to meet friends and do things in the evening, or what's the dynamic of that?
The thing about the one on Lincoln, though, it's like right by the busy street, you know, and if it's some kids playing around, we don't want to be that close to the street. Because when they had the teen night at the school, it was, you know, we can come right out the building to the basketball court, you know, and it wouldn't be that close to no street, so we ain't have to worry about no kids, you know, cars running up or anything. But the one on Lincoln is probably too close to the street, cause they done tried. I heard they was trying to make it into like like another gas station or something, but I guess they ain't fall through. And we talk with people around the community about seeing if they could turn that into it, but it's just a busy street right there. That would have messed it up though, the busy street really, if it was right there.
Okay, I've always been kind of curious about that, so thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Robert Moore? Would you state your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Robert Moore. I live at 1202 West Church Street in Urbana, Illinois.
Okay. Are you here also for the same issue?
Yeah, pretty much. No.
Do you have any thoughts on where a community
I
load?
mean, like my brother said, just to keep us off the streets, you know what I'm saying? Because I was the one that got hit with one of those bullets, but, you know what I'm saying, it wasn't no problem. It ain't no problem there on the corner, you know what I'm saying? It ain't no problem over there, you know what I'm saying? When we hang out there, we just be like, have fun just like everybody else. You know what I'm saying? We just kick it on the corner, you know what I'm saying? We don't try to bring no problems to the corner, you know what I'm saying? It's problems everywhere, you know what I'm saying? Because it's people that don't like you, the things that you do, period, you know what I'm saying? But that would be a good, step and stuff like that, because we be looking for jobs, but people don't want to hire us, because we probably don't look right, we don't talk right, and they leave, that's pretty much.
Any questions for Robert Moore? Robert Lewis.
Mr. Moore, what kind of programs would you foresee if we had a community center or a place to hang out? What kind of programs would you see that would be most beneficial to the young people that are in the neighborhood?
I mean, so where we can go, because we can't even really play basketball at the court, because, you know what I'm saying, we ain't got 2 courts. You know what I'm saying? We can't run full court, we got to run half court. Because somebody done broke the rim down, so we can't play full court. I think they did that because they don't want all of us up there, you know what I'm saying, playing basketball up there. But on the other tip, like a boys and girls club, you know what I'm saying, so we can go up there and just chill. I mean, if people do need help, you know what I'm saying, we can be helpful, you know what I'm saying, we can help the other kids, you know what I'm saying, be good and stuff like that.
So where is the basketball court?
King School.
Missing inside the school?
No, it's outside.
Outside the school, okay. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Okay, next is Demario Williams. Would you please state your name and address for the record?
Mario Williams, 307 Pfeffer Road.
Is that in Urbana? Outside Urbana?
Basically, I just come up here to add on to what they were saying. Opportunity. That's what I'm thinking about right now. Seeing if we had a lot more opportunity where we was at, and like better chance to do stuff, that opened a lot of doors for us. Cause us sitting there not doing nothing and just no activities, nothing. I mean, it's bound something. You know what I'm saying? So it's not gonna be good because it don't give us no opportunity to do anything, activities or none of that. So I'm thinking a community place would be good in the neighborhood where really don't matter to me because too much stuff been going on and people are kind of looking at us a different way and not giving us an opportunity or a chance to show them that we can be positive and there is a positive side to us. I mean, and I think that's big issue today, everywhere, Champaign, Urbana, anywhere. People just look at us judge a book by its cover, basically. And it's people need to give us more opportunity to just show that we can do something better for ourselves. Because it's not like it's like, it's a choice, but at the same time, it's like we put in a position where we not have to, but that's like the better option for us. And I don't like to see that, especially like Robert said, I don't like to see nobody get injured or none of that, because I want to see everybody live. I want to see people like when I'm old too. So that's all I'm saying. Just better chance for us to do something.
Okay, Danielle?
Yeah, I forgot to mention this before, but it was Pastor and Reverend Underwood who contacted me about 2-3 weeks ago. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they are really interested in reviving the conversations around a community center. So there's some folks that you should get in touch with. They were interested. They also said, interestingly enough, when we had a 45-minute phone conversation, and they said that there were activities missing for seniors. So kind of, there's youth activities missing, there's senior activities missing. My question to you is, what do you think the city could do or the community could do to help bridge this gap with the job opportunity problem?
I mean,
do you have ideas along those lines?
Like basically just open more programs for the seniors to like they say, get better jobs, like give them a chance to like prove themselves, well, and like basically community service. That's all. Community service, community center, basically.
Okay, thank you.
Robert Lewis.
Gwen, I have a similar question I had for this raised before. Would you be receptive to, you said jobs were difficult to get. I recognize that, and I know there's some issues that our whole city and both the city of Champaign and Urbana are dealing with in terms of persons that were incarcerated. And I'm keenly aware of the fact that once you get a job, you pay taxes, and on the other hand, and correct me if I'm wrong, sometimes that you can't vote. To me, that's taxation without representation. And I think it would behoove us all to think about the kinds of programs that we could have in our community that would help us all. Would you be receptive to the trades, for example, like plumbers, electricians, those kinds of things?
Basically anything that'll get us up and moving. Like, it's a job. I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of people wouldn't have no problem with that. I mean, but it's just the fact that when we do go out to like apply, like nothing, there's no progress. Just basically just get it. We need to get through the door, basically. Like, get that extra step to like to get a job, get the job first. The trades, that would be great. That'd be fantastic.
Thank you.
Dennis Roberts.
Well, first, I think it's really important that we hear here in the city from your neighborhood, and especially from the young people. A lot of times we hear about the activities that are going on and the challenges that younger people have in the northern community there, in the northern neighborhood, in a kind of an abstract way. And, through maybe statistics or reports, talking to you in a one-to-one is a lot more effective. And I think it's real important for you to have a voice in this community. And so I give you a lot of credit for having the courage to come up and talk and having, putting it together to say, okay, this means something to me. Because, it gets our attention. It puts a focus, a live focus on the question. It's not abstract anymore. And as some of the members here said, there had been talk in the past about community centers. There was funding. My understanding is there was actually some funding all set up, and then it kind of fell apart. The organization, how to run it, was a question. Also, recently the City Council took a walk through the Urbana Junior High School, the middle school and the high school. And we were ready to have a conversation with the administrators there about really programming for the trades and creating perhaps positions for instructor for woodcraft trades and other kinds of trades that have been discontinued at the school, in the high school level. And that would be a kind of a program that would really benefit, be a good place to begin getting straightened out for the future. So maybe there's going to be a discussion perhaps in the city council about how to keep that conversation going, and maybe there's some use for the future to talk with Parkland to talk about the technical vocational aspects of their programs. And it's possible that perhaps, since the city gets involved in funding community resource programs, that we should think about trying to find a way of doing scholarships for Parkland, to attend Parkland trade schools. So where do you see yourself in about 3 years from now?
Honestly, I'm enrolled in Parkland already. I'm going for auto tech. I see myself fixing on cars and getting money, making money and doing good for myself in about 2 or 3 years.
But you do still hang out at the corner.
That's my family. That's them. I grew up with them. So, I mean, it's not like I'm out there I'm out there with my family, with my best friends.
Okay.
I mean, just like if anybody else was out over on the corner of Vine or whatever with their friends or their family, you just out there having a good time. That's what makes me comfortable, so I'm gonna stay out there.
Do you live at home or in an apartment?
I live at home right now.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Charlie Smythe.
DeMario, I looked up United Citizens and Neighbors, and they meet on the second Thursdays of every month at King's School. I've got the contact. There's a contact person here, so I would suggest you contact this person, and let's see if we can get this on their agenda for their June meeting and start talking. And somebody should follow up with Reverend Underwood, too, and Danielle and I are talking about some things here, too, and let us know, and we'll try to get to that meeting and see what we can put together. There's a community center up there. We've been talking about it for 20 years. That's long enough. Okay, so there's clearly a need.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Okay, next is George Carlisle.
George Carlisle, 406 East Green. I'm so close I was able to walk here at least. Yeah, I've discussed, of course, with the escalating gas prices, it's affecting us all, but it doesn't seem to be doing much as far as the traffic here in town is concerned. And I do have a bus pass, but if I find oftentimes the schedules and frequency don't meet my needs, but it seems like that the traffic to the games would be a source of revenue to get us better bus service if we go after some of those vehicles. I once had a book called The Screwing of the Average Man. One chapter was subsidies to those who have, and I think that free passage on the street, especially to people who can afford to give grants and aid and other things like that's kind of like a subsidy to those who have if they don't have to pay a toll or some other fee, a surcharge on the parking to get to the games, because after all they are using up petroleum and cars are beating up our streets and congesting getting there. We need the money to have better shuttle service, like even use Lincoln Square parking lot or Champaign Country Fair or such places to have shuttles to the stadium and assembly hall for game traffic would help congestion. Some seniors have difficulty walking from where they have to park, and if we had shuttle service, maybe for some of the complexes like Clark Lindsay Village, that would be helpful to them. I know one person, he's passed away now, the late Alvin Newman said in a Christmas letter a couple of years ago he'd like to go to the games, but he quit because of the parking situation and such. People like him would need help, but we do need to charge. It seems to be discussing there was a recent article in the paper, so we need to conserve petroleum, but oftentimes it's difficult to. Then they keep jacking the price up on us, and we're kind of in a bind. right now we do need to do something. I did have called Naomi about supporting a temporary suspension of the sales tax gasoline to help a little bit, but I know that's not nearly enough. But we do need to do something about that. Say the students who seem to have very wasteful habits on campus, and it'll be a good start for them to start conservative. I see them throwing away expensive bottled water, which is about 4 times as much per volume as gasoline, and a lot of other things they're throwing away that could be used by us. I know dump and run sales help on that, but I was lucky to find a good jacket in Washington. It was like brand new, probably $100 winter jacket with a hood. But we do need to do something about this, and especially the traffic situation in Louisville. If there really is a shortage of gas, and I even favor ration your having even I call even odd toll days. You had to pay on the day that you're licensed. If you have an odd number license like I do, you pay on even days, and vice versa, and put an even odd value to those with letters on them. If that would, I think that would at least get some of the people to be forced to shop on the days they didn't have to pay. I think that would reduce the traffic a little bit at least. I know a lot of time because of performances that I'd have to pay on some of the time because of the dates they occur, but we get some of the random shopping traffic off streets, that would even help a lot.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to address the council? Okay, we'll move on. Reports of standing committees.
We have Resolution 2007-05-011R for the committee. I so move.
Okay, this is a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of an agreement with the State of Illinois for the installation of traffic signals at Cunningham Avenue and Crystal Lake Drive. Motion by Ms. Stevenson, seconded by Ms. Barnes. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
We just had 2 items from Committee of the Wholes, and the other second one is ordinance number 2007-05-041, an ordinance approving the Champaign-Urbana solid waste disposal system for the annual budget for fiscal year 2007-2008, and this came from Public Works. For the committee, I so move.
Second.
Okay, motion by Ms. Stevenson, seconded by Mr. Lewis. Is there any discussion? I'd like to point out that this is for maintaining the former landfill, that we have a responsibility to monitor it. Okay, would the clerk please call the roll on this one?
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Bowersox?
Yes.
Ms. Shenoweth?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Okay, that ordinance passes. I don't believe we have reports of special committees. Are there any reports of officers? Under new business, then, ordinance number 2007-05-044, an ordinance approving a text amendment to the zoning ordinance of the City of Urbana, Illinois, with respect to off-street parking in residential areas. I think we have Robert Myers and Jeff.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, if I can,
Who's first? Robert?
I'll just introduce this case, if that's okay. Essentially, it's a zoning ordinance text amendment to do 4 minor revisions to the section on parking. One is to clarify that accessory parking is not allowed in the front yard in residential neighborhoods. The wording is ambiguous right now. 2, to identify that clearly that permeable asphalt or permeable pavement is allowed in terms of approved parking surface. 3, containing gravel driveways. We get a lot of calls about gravel spilling out, so this is something we wanted to deal with. And 4, clarify the wording about accessory spaces, parking in yards on accessory spaces. And just to let you know, we have tried to provide the context for this by also talking about enforcement for existing ordinances that are already on the books. But we kind of wanted to give you the big picture, and so Jeff's going to fill you in on this.
Thanks, Robert. Like Robert told you, basically staff has been working on a series of neighborhood conservation issues and gravel parking and having things that are parcels having too many parking spaces. These are all issues that we want to address. We're taking a three-pronged approach to these problems. One is with the enforcement strategies, which I'll go over, try to go through quickly. The main purpose of this memo is the text amendment, so I'll go into that a little in more detail. And then also we were asked to look into open space standards, so I'll get into that a little bit as well. In terms of a little background, the zoning ordinance provides definitions for parking lots, driveways, things like that. Article 8 addresses proper design, location for parking lots, and required amounts of parking for different uses. The 1990 zoning ordinance amendments addressed parking. And after that, basically it said all parking lots must be paved with a dust-free asphalt hard surface, not asphalt, concrete, or other hard surface. It did provide for existing driveways, which were made of gravel, to continue to exist, to be grandfathered in, but that provision does not extend to parking lots. Parking lots, gravel parking lots, are kind of problematic for several reasons. Gravel spreads, it's not easily contained. Over time, people refill their parking lot, and their parking lot suddenly becomes bigger and there's an extra space. It's difficult to demarcate spaces in a gravel parking lot. Gravel spreads dust. It's hard to plow in the winter. And in general, it contributes to a blighted appearance and could negatively impact property values. So to address this, we conducted a citywide survey, and we found that the majority of these gravel parking lots are concentrated in the West Urbana neighborhood near campus. Surprise, surprise. I'll direct your attention to my updated maps here to show where they are. This is Exhibit A. This is recently updated. Shows gravel parking lots and driveways in the survey area. Just a note, this is just a snapshot of a concentrated area. There's other problems we're aware of, and we'll work our way out to those. But right here, we just wanted to do an intense survey of this area to get at the extent of the problem. In this map, it's color-coded by zoning district. R2 and R3 are the single and two-family zoning districts. They're yellow and orange. The multifamily districts are purple and blue. R7 is the university zoning district. It's purple. Each of these parcels has a number or letter in it. The letter D stands for driveway, or the number is the number of gravel parking spaces we think those parking lots have. We can't be entirely certain because most of them are behind houses and we can't trespass to find out how many there are exactly. So to deal with these, we've come up with some enforcement responses, and I'll try to go through these here. If you direct your attention to Exhibit B, we've got these mapped out. We, to make enforcement easier, we divided these into 4 categories. Category 1 are properties that are multifamily uses that are zoned for multifamily use. These have been, they're colored here in red. They're mostly on the west side of BC here with all the big student apartments. These basically, our enforcement response is going to be to make them pave their gravel parking lot. They've been getting a free ride for a while, but we're going to try to catch up with them. And it's in the zoning ordinance. It's been in there for a while. They need to have them paved. So we'll work with the owners, try to do it with as little impact as possible in terms of runoff, and don't want to put extra cars out onto the street. We'll try to conserve as many spaces as we can. That'll be category 1. Category 2 is multifamily properties or apartment buildings that are in the single or two-family zones, R3, R2. Those are in orange here. There's not too many of them, I think just 16. These we're going to take on a case-by-case basis. We're going to research the properties in our maintenance files, find out how many parking spaces they need to have, if they've been granted any waivers or grandfathered in any gravel spaces. But in general, we're going to try to get them to pave the apartment building parking lots. Category 3, this is kind of similar to Category 2. This is just single-family and duplex houses in the R2 and R3 districts. What we're going to do there is we're going to, again, on a case-by-case basis, go through, figure out how many spots they're allowed to have. Single-family and duplexes are allowed to have up to 2 accessory spaces per dwelling unit. So if they have too many, we might try to deal with those, maybe even have to remove some of those. But we want to try to clean it up and get rid of the gravel parking lots there. We're not going to force them to pave, though, because in the long run we think that would be detrimental to the neighborhood. It would cause a lot of extra stormwater runoff, and these homes could eventually be brought back into single-family use. The last category, Category 4, these are single-family homes and duplexes that just have the proper amount of parking. They've got a gravel driveway, maybe 1 or 2 accessory spaces. With these, we just want to make sure that the gravel is contained. And the mechanism for this is our rental registration, systematic inspections. We'll let them know that they need to have any gravel accessory spaces must be contained as per the ordinance. A couple notes here. These enforcement strategies are separate from the text amendment. Our main purpose here is the text amendment. And this is a work in progress. We've been updating the maps continuously for the last few months, and we'll continue to do so. And we've got a lot more research to go for our enforcement. Moving on to the actual text amendment. The purpose of the text amendment is to clarify the intent of the parking ordinance and to clean up some of the language, some of the problems that were left over from our last omnibus text amendment. The parking ordinance is not very clear. The lack of clarity has led to some recent cases where someone thought they could install a parking space within their front yard. So we had to take them to the ZBA. They had to appeal to the Zoning Board of Appeals. And the Zoning Board upheld that you are not allowed to park within your front yard setback. So in order to deal with cases like this, we want to head them off at the pass and just make it absolutely clear in the zoning ordinance that you can't park in these areas. The intent of the zoning ordinance is pretty clear. Parking may not be located in the required front yard. That's your 15-yard or your average setback, 15-foot front yard. The exception is parking within a driveway in a single family or duplex. Also, parking may not be located in the side or rear yard, and the exception to that is within a driveway or within a garage or behind the rear face of your home. So you can put your boat out behind the rear face of your home or in the garage, but you can't have it in your front yard. Going through the substantive parts of our text amendments, paragraph 8-4D, we're going to add the word rear. So it reads, except as otherwise allowed herein, off-street parking in required front, rear, or side yard, etc. is prohibited. Also, we're going to add the sentence, accessory parking spaces shall not be located in the required front yard to paragraph 8-4F1. The other substantive change we're going to do is clarify that permeable pavers or asphalts are allowed. Right now they have to be approved by the zoning administrator, but this would allow people to go ahead and use them or install permeable paving as long as they do it properly. This is helpful in promoting city council goals and our comprehensive plan goals of sustainability and reducing environmental impacts and runoff, things like that. Another change is that we're going to ask owners of gravel driveways to contain their gravel with a border of curb or landscape buffer when they go ahead and resurface their driveways. This way, when they resurface the driveways, it won't spread out and they won't find themselves with an extra space over the years. There's a couple other minor language issues that have been clarified for consistency. These are all in Exhibit C. Lastly, I'll just talk about open space requirements. This came up in our analysis of parking. Essentially, many homes converted into multifamily apartments have no rear green or open space. They just have a parking lot behind the main structure. And the main way we're going to address this is through these enforcement tools I've been talking about. But another idea that was brought up was to look at our open space definitions and standards. So staff looked at several other cities, I think 7 other cities, other central Illinois cities and Big Ten cities, and we found in general our open space requirements are similar, if not exceeding the average for these other cities. So I think we're doing pretty good there. When we're looking at these open space ordinance potential changes, we need to ask if they're going to bring about the desired results. Most of the areas we want to fix are smaller, older neighborhoods, and they're already non-conforming in terms of open space. So it's not really going to impact those areas. Our impacts are only going to be on the bigger lots and the new developments at the fringe of the city, and those already contain ample open space. Something else we need to watch out for is unintended consequences. If we impose higher open space standards, it would make it harder for people to do infill developments, to add rooms to their homes, and to otherwise invest in their properties in the inner city. So ultimately, it appears these potential changes are not going to bring about the desired result of increasing green space in these older inner city neighborhoods. So staff is recommending against any changes to open space. The Plan Commission heard this case on May 10th, and they voted unanimously, 6 ayes and 0 nays, to forward it with a recommendation of approval. Staff concurs with that recommendation, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Brandon Bauer-Sykes.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I have a couple questions about language. First, on page 80, which was the page where you were telling us about some of the other language changes, at the bottom of that page, one of the paragraphs was completely stricken, and I just wanted to understand the intent and what that meant. In section 8-4, F4, at the bottom of page 80, can you explain what taking out that paragraph does?
Sure. Let me zoom in on this here for you. Basically, this is redundant language. If you turn over to the next page, number 7 at the top of the page, it says exactly the same thing. It allows parking lots to encroach 10 feet into the required 15-foot setback if a buffer yard is maintained.
Okay, thank you very much. That makes sense. My next one is on page 81. I just have 3 of these. On page 81 and in a couple other places, you struck railroad ties from the sort of automatically approved containment methods for a gravel driveway or parking space. Is it your intent then to not even administratively approve railroad ties and to phase them out, or to just not automatically approve them, but to still consider them when people come to you with a plan for how to contain with railroad ties?
I think it would be more the latter. Railroad ties can be done tastefully. We just want to make sure they're done in a way that enhances the neighborhood and not detracts from it.
Okay, thank you. My last one is on page 87. There was some changes to the bicycle parking table of requirements. You struck in one of the notes a couple of the things you would consider in determining how much bike parking would be required: the proximity to other uses with bicycle generated. The proximity to other uses with bicycle generated by the use, and the location of the development. So you struck some of the language about what would be considered when determining the required parking. Can you just explain the intent of that change?
This actually looks like a remnant from the last ordinance amendment. I think. Oh. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, right. The proximity clause is there again anyway. Okay, so it was redundant wording that was there twice. Thank you. The last one I just wanted to point out, when we actually get to making the motion, there was a little typo in the ordinance itself. In the actual ordinance text, after all the whereases, in section 1 of the ordinance, it reads that this article is amended to read as follows: in the document attached hereto as Exhibit A, but it turns out that document is attached as Exhibit C. The text amendment is Exhibit C. So when we make a motion to approve this, should we do that, I'd ask that we strike Exhibit A and insert Exhibit C into the ordinance itself.
Okay.
Thank you very much for all of the detailed work on this.
Thanks.
Dennis Roberts.
Hey, Jeff. Hi.
Hi.
So obviously there's been some discussion about how to perhaps get a handle of correcting improper parking in certain areas of town. Maybe just as a general, just for our information, what was the directive to get this taken care of specifically?
This has been a long-standing case that precedes my hiring here. I think we've been working on it. We finally got the ability to work on it when we had enough staff to put effort into it. So we spoke with a few council members, and we tried to figure out what the concerns were. We talked to some community members, and basically we just wanted to put something together to solve a problem that's been there for a long time.
Why did you focus on a very specific wedge of the west side of town when there are older neighborhoods to the north and also to the east?
That's a good question. When we started this, I actually did a lot of driving around. I found gravel driveways are spread out all around town, but parking lots were very few and far between. There are a few up here in East Urbana. There's a couple over by the north side of campus, but this area is just dripping with them. This is where the majority of the gravel parking lots in town are found, in this area. So this is where we decided to start working on the problem, and then we're going to extend our enforcement as other cases come up.
Because the fact that you limit it to a very specific quadrant of, street blocks makes it, and you're presenting this as a text amendment at this time, makes it look like certain neighborhood is being focused upon, or, some people, I suppose, some property owners might say victimized. Whereas, depending on where you live in town, you don't have any attention placed on your property at all. So it just seemed kind of odd that you would be, that the way the ordinance is being presented tonight would be so spot specific, when don't you really intend these rules to apply to all of Urbana?
Oh, certainly we do. It just ended up this way because we wanted to give you all the enforcement and the open space material for the background. The text amendment certainly is going to be enforced across the whole state.
Universally enforced.
Yes.
Okay. So all the examples happen to come from this particular study area?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Maybe Libby can help with this. I guess it's like the opposite of preferential treatment is how it strikes me, so I'm just sort of wondering the definition
It
here.
is a response to years of neighbor complaints and neighbor concerns and pulling out hair and, many neighborhood meetings with, what can the city do, what can we do to improve our regulations and our enforcement, and those complaints have come largely from this area. So when we did want to look at solutions for the entire city, but in terms of the enforcement, we're really looking at where we've received complaints. The text amendments will help throughout the city, though. But this is, and ordinarily we wouldn't include a big section on enforcement in a text amendment case, but we did want to let the neighborhood know that we have been working on it. We have some solutions. We hope it'll make a difference. But years of huge concern, and some folks living right next to some of the very blighted areas, they've just been beside themselves, and we feel that this begins to address the problem.
I've got a couple more questions. Can I continue to ask? Okay. Thanks. One of the things that is mentioned specifically is that permeable asphalt surfaces are now can be accepted as a standard substance for parking surfaces in paved lots. But the conversation in the document also mentions how difficult they are to upkeep, and that in the Urbana area, because of the clay soils, they're almost they're difficult to install because there has to be a lot of preparation of the substrata so that there's proper draining. So I'm wondering, of course, I really like the idea of using this newer green technology. I haven't really seen any presentations about how its effectiveness can be kind of guaranteed in our area. So I'm wondering, I guess I'm wondering if it's a suggestion that it's a good one, but perhaps not very applicable.
Well, I think it does apply. There is at least one such parking lot over in Champaign. There's a church that has a permeable asphalt parking lot. I think we just wanted to insert it there in case any of the larger properties wanted to be proactive about this kind of thing. It might not be likely, but it's there just in case we need it.
Okay. I also had a question about, I have a lot of questions apparently. I had a question about the railroad tie restriction. That seems really interesting to me because in the same paragraph you say that a vegetative border is sufficient. And I'm thinking that a vegetative border, I'm not quite sure what specifically that entails, but if it were, say, a flower bed, would be a way less likely way of maintaining gravel than a rigid railroad tie. So what's the story behind wishing to eliminate railroad ties? It seems like an obvious, inexpensive way to contain gravel.
I think there are some concerns for how they appear. Lana?
I think we didn't want to just identify that as the border of choice, And by using approved landscape border, I think there are catalogs where they have landscape edge materials, and these are pretty new. There's a lot of, looks like stone, there's a lot of different ways to make a border and contain it other than using railroad ties. So I think we just wanted to make a generic term and then use a review to say, would this do the job, would this, fit in, and hopefully yes, but we're not
You're
prohibiting
thinking,
railroad ties.
so you're envisioning like some of the decorative brick things that you can buy at local
Right, the edging
housing
materials.
stores.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I see. All right. The ordinance also talks about PUDs, the planned urban developments or unit developments, which seems like a far jump then from the older neighborhoods that originally was the intent of this program. So it's actually kind of more far-reaching in some ways because you're tying in, well, a lot of kinds of uses of land in this ordinance.
Well, this was an opportunity to update the ordinance to address the newly updated PUD ordinance and reference that correctly.
Is there going to be a period of public input, or is this meeting the public input on this document?
There was a public hearing at the Plan Commission.
At the Planning Commission?
Yes.
Okay. I'll stop asking questions at this point so other people can chip in.
Charlie Smythe.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly support this. This is something that's a long time coming. The biggest complaints come from the West Urbana neighborhood, where this kind of thing is proliferated. And had we had this language 20 years ago, we wouldn't have, maybe longer than that. I think the deterioration began in the 70s in this neighborhood. And this is the kind of thing that led to a lot of that deterioration. And so this language is really very, very needed, and I support it completely. But there are a couple little things in here that language-wise I want to bounce off of people, so I don't think it's quite ready. And when I'm done speaking and when the discussion's finished, I'm going to move to defer this to our next council meeting. But I'm thinking on page 74 in subsection A, paragraph 2, we talk about, they've added permeable asphalt, permeable pavers, or other suitable surface approved by the zoning administrator. That allows the green technology that's coming, I think. If we wanted to, we could expand that, include some additional wording, say, or other suitable surfaces, including new environmentally friendly technologies approved by the zoning administrator. Okay, so that would be some language that we could include there. If you wanted to expand on that, on the environmentally friendly there a little more. On page 81, under H3, we have, there's the with curb or approved landscape border. Then we also have cement. One of the concerns there is somebody using, say, solid cement blocks that might be even uglier than railroad ties. And so a suggestion was made to me by Glenn Berman, who's standing in the back, that the word continuous curbing be used there instead of cement. So
actually, I think the intent of this is saying that gravel with a curb or approved landscape is one potential surface, and cement is another potential paving surface.
I see. Okay. Maybe you could reword that a little bit, clarify that, so that it makes a little, so that the continuous curbing, cement continuous curbing it makes sense there. Yeah. Okay, so that somebody doesn't go and just do the wrong thing because they misread it like I did. I think it's important to understand that this will apply to the whole city. And when I first looked at it and I saw the maps and I saw a number of mistakes on there, and I went out and started walking the neighborhood, and after 3 hours, I'd only, because I ran into a lot of people talking. I only made it through 3.5, 4 blocks of this. I really wanted a chance to look at more of this and understand it a little better. There are a couple things that are missing here, but that's enforcement. So we really have to look at this is an example, a sample of what's going to happen, though it's a sample of where things will start, because it's the worst examples of what's going on in the city versus the actual changes. So, I mean, I support the changes themselves with these minor little corrections that have been pointed out tonight. But again, I'd like staff to just add that wording, and then if we're done discussing it after Lynn is, I'll make a motion to defer it.
Lynn Barnes.
I'm comfortable with your deferment of this till the next council meeting, and I appreciate that we're moving forward on this, and it's very consistent with the objectives and the goals of the comprehensive plan, and that's another reason why it was that we're getting this done, to try to have it fit better with the comprehensive plan. And just a quick question, were there any, at the public hearing, were there any naysayers?
No, there were not.
Thank you.
I have a question. On page 74, when you're talking about replacing the gravel on an existing driveway that was built before 1990, are you going to require a permit then to put more gravel? I mean, how can you enforce that? Well, if we're going to defer it, maybe that question can be answered later. Charlie Smythe? Oh,
Well,
Robert.
I was just going to say, admittedly, if you don't have to get a permit to refresh your gravel on your driveway, it's harder to catch, but we do get phone calls about that sort of thing. Someone will say, someone's adding gravel to their driveway and it's widening now. We do get phone calls and that sorts of things, and they say, is there anything that's their gravel driveway is widening and widening and widening over time, and it's taken over half the yard. Is there anything that we can do about that? And to the extent possible, we say yes, but these ordinance changes will help fix that. But there's not a perfect clear solution because we don't require a permit in that case.
Charlie Smythe.
Move to defer.
I guess that's all it takes, right? There's no vote. All right, we'll defer it until June 4th. Dennis Roberts.
Yeah, I guess I just want to say that I think that really when it comes down to solving some of the neighborhood problems, going back and finessing aspects of our ordinance is the logical way to go. I know that recently in front of the Planning Commission there was a long discussion about the neighborhood conservation districts and how to put them into use. And my understanding is that the ultimate feeling was that it's kind of an unwieldy and very difficult process, and that perhaps some of these adjustments to our zoning and maintenance codes that we already have in place on the books is the easiest and the most efficient way to solve individual problems that come up, which of course do need addressing. So I give you credit for placing attention on this and trying to make our neighborhoods more livable and more interesting to live in.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Okay, next, staff appointments. I have given you a list of the appointments for July 1st, 2007 through June 30th, 2008.
Move approval.
Motion by Mr. Smythe, seconded by Ms. Barnes. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. Okay, next, we've had a couple of people patiently waiting. The Economic Development Corporation, would you like to come forward, please? Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Okay. Mayor, council members, my name is John Kempen. I'm the current board chair of the Champaign County Economic Development Corporation. We appreciate the opportunity to make a presentment tonight. Jeannie Gustafson, our Executive Director, will go through a short PowerPoint presentation. And we have as well with us tonight Tom Bruno, who is also a member of our board and our Executive Committee. So again, we'd like to go through a short PowerPoint presentation, and then if you have questions, we would love to field those at the end, or if there's any compelling questions to the PowerPoint, we would field them as well. So thank you. Jeannie?
I want to welcome Tom Bruno to Urbana.
It's a pleasure to be here. I may start coming on a regular basis.
You get to see Democracy Urbana style, so.
It's wonderful.
You can do an exchange program.
It's my pleasure to be here. I've been here now 3 years, and I'm excited to be in front of your council tonight, be able to talk to you as far as what we do and what our mission's all about. Our mission statement is fairly consistent with most public-private countywide organizations. Obviously, it's to look at business climate in a favorable method. First of all, we want to, most importantly, retain our companies and expand them, and then also to work at attracting them in a cooperative basis. We have two other components that are a little different. First of all, that's to work with the University of Illinois on their Willard Fly CMI Airport. And the third one is to work as far as an alliance. And with an alliance, what it does is allow us to have like a one-stop shop, where not only do we have the Convention Visitors Bureau and the Chamber and the Economic Development Corporation, but also the Economic Development Corporation funds the space for the Small Business Development Center. The Chamber of Commerce provides space for the retired executives, and the Convention and Visitors Bureau supplies space for 40 North and also the Sports Commission. So we're housed in one roof. Having said that, we do work as an alliance in some ways, where we share services and front staff, but we also have a different type of a structure as far as each working independently. And since Tom and John worked on the alliance, if you want to make a comment about how that works, where we're together, but yet we're independent as organizations.
Well, I would just want to emphasize that we're often misunderstood. We are three separate organizations with three separate boards that govern them. And every one of the three organizations is autonomous and answers to different boards. So the views of one organization may be very different than the others, but we co-locate, share a photocopier, that kind of thing. But the EDC and the Chamber and the CVB should not be confused with one another.
I'd also point out that while many of the clients and constituencies of the Chamber of Commerce are very much well-known and in the public eye and known to organizations around the community, many times the work of the Economic Development Corporation deals with companies that no one ever hears about, as they may be contacting us, the various municipalities, under very secret situations and trying to locate or expand our operations here. So from that perspective, we also can work very independently of the Chamber and some other organizations. It's a very important role for us.
Having said that, we get along really well, and I think it's a great opportunity for us to share services. One of the things that, and that is one of the slides you talked about not being able to see. There is no way I can put my entire board on a screen and see who my board of directors is. But I do think it's interesting to note that we do have 38 members on our board of directors. And they meet regularly, and their attendance is fantastic. I've never been in a room where between staff and our board of directors and the media, we'll have 40-some people in our room at our full board meetings. And they do represent a good constituency of the county. The nice thing about the way this is set up is that when we do have projects, first of all, any funding that we get publicly is leveraged privately. So when you're investing into the Economic Development Corporation, you're leveraging that money against funding from 70 private investors with the University of Illinois, with Parkland College, with the East Central Illinois Building Trades. So we've got all 38 people together coming both financially plus with their time as volunteers to look at a work plan to try and find jobs for the people that were here earlier in the evening. But the other thing is their times and talents, and when you're working on a project, it's really nice to be able to be in the middle of a situation and know the people that are working for the utility companies, know the financial institutions, and have human resource staff that you can call on a last-minute project in a very critical situation. Our staffing, right now, we have staffing set for 4. We're looking at a deputy director position, but we do have a good organizational staff, and we're excited about where we're heading on that. Work plan components are broad-based, but I think what you're probably interested in more, if you heard a lot of what we've done before, but some of the new things that are going on this year that you'll be hearing about is last year we had a tech show, which I think some of you realize that OJC Technologies chaired, which we had like a 12-member committee, and we hosted in Urbana. This year we'll be looking at doing a tech show on that. Another thing we're doing is we'll be starting manufacturing roundtables. That's one of the things when we did our retention visits that they said we'd like to see roundtables and pull together topics of interest. We're also looking at foreign trade zones because we've got a lot of companies that bring in materials from import them in from other countries, and we're looking at savings for them on that. I'll be talking about a workforce development analysis and also looking at graduation committees. We've got a lot of companies graduating out of our incubator, business incubator, and we're at a precipice right now where we can save them to our own community. So within all of these different things you say, those are the spots that will be new in the next agenda. Retention. Retention is our #1 goal for our organization because 60% of growth comes with retention and expansion. When I came here, I thought they were crazy to think that we could ever visit 100 companies per year as a community, and we do that. We're at 97 now with our fiscal year ending June 30th, but we do that in cooperation with the communities. If we come to Urbana, we've got either Tom Carino or Ryan Brault or somebody from the city at the table with us so we can work cooperatively on all the different issues. This is probably one of our most exciting things that we work on because now we're collecting a database based on surveys of these companies to start to see trends within the manufacturers in our primary sector. Plus, we also visit our tech companies. Here's the one that always gets to be fun, our secret, super secret projects that go on. We do have information that comes in, and more confidentiality agreements are part of the mainstay, to the point where our projects, everything we get from the state, and a lot of them from our clients are code-named. I think some of you read in the paper about Project Kirk Big River, which is the big mega project that is looking at us in another community. That company has probably spent 6 days in the community. The first 2 days were spent looking at labor. The second 2 days were looking at sites, and the third set of 2 days were looking at information meeting the people and trying to get a lead team in. To this date, we're still doing demographic information. I think we're good on labor, but they still do not have a location within the county picked out. So that's where it's nice to have the countywide organization working together to look at the projects. That's one of 2 projects that we've looked at this past week. This particular project took a sabbatical because they were hiring in another community and trying to figure out hiring in that community. Information services, and feel free to step in on anything. Information services, we do keep a lot of directories updated. We have tried and update our tech directory because our tech companies change very rapidly, and we've got a lot of exciting activity going on. We have a top employers guide that if you want to look up manufacturers, you can go on our website, and we have manufacturing directories. We also do keep profiles. We can pretty well get you demographics on any ring study within a couple hours through the state, too. And we also keep track of the state building and sites database. One thing that people don't realize is people ask for cost of living information to compare communities quite a bit. Our office does that on a quarterly basis. I mean, we literally go out and check the price of peas and the thing of canned corn because that's some of the most valuable data that we can have, renting. So if you ever need an accurate cost of living study done in comparison, we keep that up to date. And the other thing we provide as services is we purchase the Retail Lease Track database, which is a database of who the different retailers are, who their point of contact is, what kind of square footage you're looking for, whether they want a university town, and who the email address is.
Let me stop Jeannie there a second and just say, I didn't, when I first got involved in economic development issues, didn't understand exactly how this process works. But she's sort of the EDC is sort of the go team for Champaign County, and they will get contacted by a site selection professional somewhere in the country who's trying to winnow down a list of 100 sites down to 10 maybe, and then down to 3 for location of their project. And the EDC will be presented with maybe a list of 100 questions. I want to know this, I want to know this, I want to know this. And then they scramble, and they answer the questions about our labor force, our schools, our transportation, our sites that are available. We have to be ready with that information to scramble to one of those requests and get the information to them promptly and in a favorable way for Champaign County. So we have to be up to date on this information at all times, because when the request comes in, they become more and more demanding in the tremendous amount of information they want our community to answer, just for us to try to keep our chances alive.
Sometimes those timelines are very short, in a matter of days, less than a week. Another aspect is the inner workings with the university, obviously, and then also the state of Illinois. And one of the things we're very fortunate is because Jeannie's tenure in the state of Illinois, prior to coming to Champaign County, relationships she has in Springfield on a first-name basis are of critical importance, and obviously that's a situation we want to continue to work on.
I will tell you, too, on the big lead that we had a company give us a list of who they wanted to meet with, and have, like, within 2 days, had hour meeting with this, hour meeting with this, hour meeting with this, hour meeting with this, tour with this. And the community, county-wide, just came through tremendously. Developers just dropped everything they do to say, I'll show this building at this thing, I'll do this thing at this thing. The Tom Carinos of the world and the different people come together. We typically, like with the retail lease track, that's kind of their specialty. But our thing is, if there's a database that we could purchase that we can use collectively throughout the county, that's a good thing for the EDC to do. They say, hey, we'll purchase this information, we'll provide it out to the different people and communities to use. Location 1 is a sample of a database that the state uses that we can put buildings. In fact, we have 137 buildings and sites put into that. Real quick, too, the labor force is a big issue we always hear about. So this year we have 2 things we'll be putting together. We requested the companies to give us the zip codes of all of their employees and where they're coming from, not the names, just the zip codes. So we are having them plotted out geographically, so we can see where commuters are coming from to go to work, to use that for several purposes, to find out our commuting patterns and to prove to people in Chicago that you can get there in a mile in a minute. That's one, a lot of the things with the site consultants. They can't believe people can drive down here in that time. Also to look legislatively at the impacts of our different companies, and also to find out location of, work that where people are actually soliciting work. And the other one is Pathfinder study, which is to study underemployment. When you look at some of the demographics in our community, especially ones that have a very high base of employment, knowing where the underemployment is and the levels of wages that it would take to move these people to the next level and move people to different categories is important.
For instance, this big project that is considering Champaign County might employ 1,000 people, and they're wondering whether they're doubtful that they could find 1,000 people willing to work in Champaign County. And we have to convince them that it would not be unreasonable in this region for somebody from Danville to drive here to work, or someone from Monticello or Paxton to come to this community. And that's why the zip code information from our existing local employers is powerful information to say, look, the University of Illinois is drawing from 50, 100-mile radius, the hospitals are, and we need to be able to show that to these big employers.
Could I just ask you a question? Sure. There is a bus that now goes between Danville and Urbana and Champaign. But what level of education do they require for these 1,000 employees?
This particular employer, and reasons it's so attractive is these are fairly well-paying jobs, health insurance, and I'm not sure. It's technical work. It's office work.
But good high-level office work. You're looking $35,000 a year to start, plus benefits.
But when they tell you they want employees, what's their minimum requirement for the employees?
Well, it really depends on who the company is. But
no, this particular one is what I'm asking about.
On this particular, I don't know.
Financial and software.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So I don't know. Are they looking for exclusively people with college degrees, or?
No, they'll take some without college degrees, but a lot of them are fairly decent level of work.
Okay.
Great for our university.
This is just one, but this is a big one because it's 1,000 employees at 35,000 and up.
This is the type of profile of company that may come by once every 5 to 10 years. We'll see a lot of instances of 100 to 200 person employees that may look at 4.5% employment and say, can we get people that can drive from, and they don't know where Buckley Loda is, and we have to tell them that that's real and that can happen. What does that mean? Because that's important to them. that would be a more typical example.
And being from a very populated cities, as our site consultants are, having the data where we took them in, where one HR person says, here's geographically where my employees all drive from every day, and they could prove it. And that was impressive to them to see that we have a shorter drive time than anticipated being in Chicago or the Atlantic or in other busy cities. Okay, real quick, I'm almost done. High tech is huge here. I never would have thought it was as big here as it is. The university is so aggressive with their innovation and commercialization that this is something that's been really exciting for us. We have this year taken on the Entrepreneurial Center within the Office of the Economic Development and the Alliance. So we're working with the Entrepreneurial Center program. Tech mixers are growing. Once a month we get somebody to sponsor a social event, and it's primarily social, but we're getting to the point now where you'll have 150 to 200 people show up. And the thing that was most impressive is I don't think Tom knew most of them in the room because they were all the young techies, which is kind of exciting.
Thanks, Judy.
No, it's just a different group of research people and people involved in technology and research, and I very strongly invite you to be there just to learn and meet some of the different people. Tech Show was very exciting, and Brandon and OJC shared that role with that. We keep a monthly newsletter. We visit the companies, and we're really excited about tech tours and also the graduation committee. So the high-tech environment is an exciting one. We have people making products out there that just, blow me away personally, and it's exciting for us as an opportunity. We did get, and I should give credit for this, we had Tom Bruno as a private citizen came forth and said we need to think globally. And why do we need to think globally? Because this is literally the entire skyline of China. And he came forth to our group and discussed the idea of thinking globally. And if Tommy wanted
it's just that the EDC sponsored this trip then where private citizens paid their own way and went on a trade mission as volunteers. My Urbana friend Joe Bukowski's in the back. He went with us to China. And went and just carried the message of Champaign County to China, and talked with some U.S. Department of Commerce officials over there and some regional mayors, and came back a little bit more educated about the challenges China will present to East Central Illinois, the opportunities it will present. But it was a sponsored trip. The EDC sponsored it, but it was completely volunteer and funded by the individuals who went on the trip. So something we were proud of as an activity for our county to learn and about the opportunities for us.
From Monday to Friday, we keep these people who paid for their own money busy in meetings from morning till night. Very little sleep. Benefits, obviously, I think you all realize the benefits, creation, retention of jobs, property taxes, are things that you're fairly used to. But I think the benefit that we have is our partnership that we have with the university and Parkland and all the different organizations. And with that, John, as chair, I'll let you.
Sure. Again, our public-private partnership, we operate on a budget of approximately $500,000. We're supported by individual company donations, and then several of the municipalities, City of Urbana is one of them within the county, that fund us. We have continuing needs for funding. The Pathfinder study, for example, that one document is about a $20,000 document that we need to update every 2 years, because if we're not updating that, there's 9 other communities our size that are doing that, and so staying up to date with information and securing funding to go forward is of critical importance to us. And we appreciate that the City of Urbana has supported us in the past, and we hope that you'll consider that and perhaps even consider furthering that this year. We open up for questions.
Lynn Barnes.
I just have a comment. I sit on the EDC as our rep from the City of Urbana, and I can speak to the vibrancy of and the collaboration of the individuals that are there, and kind of the unity that's all about Champaign County and trying to promote economic development. It's quite exciting, and as John mentioned, I hope that we'll continue. Right now our contribution is $25,000 annually, and I hope that we'll continue that at least at a minimum, and maybe even consider doing something more to help continue to promote that, and we'll continue to work collaboratively with our city and EDC. So thank you. I appreciate you guys coming tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation. I just have a couple of questions. They're kind of questions having to do with trends, because this is an opportunity for us to hear from you in terms of kind of last year's trends, et cetera. The first question is, we talk about business retention. I know you do retention business, but there's also the issue of employee retention, especially professional employees, tech employees. As a tech business myself, frequently in discussing with other tech companies, the biggest issue is figuring out how to recruit people to this area and also to retain them in the area. So could you talk a little bit about kind of trends you see and the role that the EDC has played or could play in that kind of professional workforce retention, which of course helps to bring the businesses?
I'd like to speak to that a little bit. One of the things that we have Gene Amberg and Arthur Culver now on our board. And so we're concerned about the quality of schools in Champaign County. We have representatives of Parkland and the University of Illinois. We want this to be a high-quality town in which people want to live, because you're absolutely right that the paradigm shift has been that it's not so much just attracting employers now. You want to attract the employees, and because we will be a repository of gifted talent, employers will seek out Champaign County, because this is where they'll find the software engineers and the quality skilled people. So we're not just out looking for people to put up a bricks and mortar building and expect that folks are going to transfer their families here like they might have in the 1950s. We're trying to have an environment here with the research park and with the tech mix events where quality people with talents want to live in our community. So that would be what I would say about that observation. That you're right, it's a different way of viewing the world.
And I guess a comment on that is to think, I think one of the things, there's this disconnect, this historic disconnect, I believe, from the old school business community and the new school business community, so to speak. So old school business community tended to be demographically white and male, and the new school business community isn't necessarily like that. Old school business community has roots in the community. The new school business community, in a lot of ways, things I've read in Wired and other magazines is, for example, how friendly an environment is for gays and lesbians correlates directly to how popular it is for tech employees. Not because tech employees are gay and lesbian, because there's not that many gay and lesbian people, but because that's a factor for tolerance. Same thing with people who are looking for racial tolerance, they're looking for a progressive community, they're looking for recreation opportunities, they're definitely looking at schools and housing and price points for housing. So I guess I would, one of the pieces I feel we're missing somehow is the cultural aspect. And I know that kind of 40 North has worked on this. Their board is much more kind of demographically representative of the community. But I feel in some ways, and I did serve on the EDC board, and looking at that list, actually there's fewer women now than there was before. I think Lynn, unfortunately, is the only... Lynn and Jeannie have to put up with the rest of y'all. So,
and we do quite well.
I'm sure you do. But the issue is, I feel like that's an indication. To me, that's an indication that part of what's driving the EDC is old school business mentality, and to reach out to the newer businesses like Volition, which I did a lot. We were hired to do marketing work for Volition. I mean, their biggest issue, and we interviewed a ton of staff. We did a survey of hundreds. You know, they have 100 staff there. We surveyed the 100 staff, and they said over and over, one of the biggest issues is, you know, is this a tolerant community? Is it a vibrant community, et cetera? And once they moved here, they learned that that was the case, but they did not get that from the picture that they saw coming into the community. So somehow we have to mix things up. So I wanted to put that comment out there. The second thing is the city of Urbana is working on I guess this summer we're going to hire a company to help us out with an identity campaign, and I'd really like to get your input, the EDC's input, or particularly your input, Jeannie, since you're kind of on the front lines of economic development in the county, to get some feedback from you on that campaign.
Be happy to.
Mm-hmm. The third thing was, I would like to see us be the most important airport in downstate Illinois. At the same time, I'm not sure if that's possible at this point. So the question I have is, let's imagine if there was a high-speed rail connection between Champaign-Urbana and, say, the Metra stop at University Park, which is 2 hours north by car. If it was high-speed, it would be 1 hour north by high-speed rail, and then you'd basically be on the Metra and you could go straight into the city. So my question is, how much has the EDC looked at the issue of high-speed rail and how that could, not necessarily to forget about Willard Airport, but to expand our horizon, especially with the loss of the recent airline, to expand our horizon to look at if high-speed rail could really play a role in both the employee retention we're talking about and also making this direct connection. I mean, if this was Europe, we'd be an hour away from Chicago. I mean, that's the facts. Like, we just are so behind in this country when it comes to transportation issues. I mean, Tom and I are on the same page with this. So the question is the EDC looking at high-speed rail? Have you had a discussion about that? What are your thoughts?
Well, we are not, we're not looking at that at this point, but it's interesting, the last trip that we took when we went from downtown Shanghai to the airport was traveling 431 kilometers per hour for $7.
That's my kind of transportation system.
And those types of things, like the airport, are the things that we will go around the room very often and say, okay, you can get caught up in the business of the day, but where do we need to be 5 years, 10 years, and 15 years? And when we go around, we talk about education, what's going on in real estate, what's going on with high tech, all these critical issues that are going on in the community. We do spend time talking about that because we know we need to look ahead. We wouldn't necessarily be the funding mechanism, but we think we put at least one of the groups that puts people in the room that we can be talking about those things.
And let me say that, I'm sorry, that you're going to have to wrap your gavel at me probably because I talk too much, but one of the things that the EDC provides for this county is a central gathering place. We're a board half public, half private, from representing all the major governmental institutions and all the major
education, healthcare, real estate,
industries can all come together at the table and have these kinds of discussions. I don't think we specifically talked about high-speed rail, but it's a natural venue for those kinds of discussions. We have no other agenda other than what's best for our community, for our broader community, to help have us have successful economic development.
Could you give a, oh, go ahead.
This is my last comment, I promise. Just because I haven't had an opportunity to have input, and I really think that this is a good time for us to have an exchange. The last comment is my concern since I moved here in 1995 and was on food stamps and now have a technology company. I think my story is similar to a lot of people's stories in this community, which is we have this disconnect. We've got professional jobs and we've got service jobs. So the U of I employed, 70% of the community, and then there's the folks who serve those folks. Mostly not unionized, mostly entry-level jobs. That's fine. I'm happy to have an entry-level job in high school and maybe in college. But once I get out of college, I'm not looking for minimum wage anymore. So the question is, we have this gap, and that gap is mostly at this point filled by the hospitals. You know, Carl and Pravina, they have a range of employment opportunities. But because we're not a very strong union town, because we don't have a lot of manufacturing jobs, we're missing that gap. And I guess in terms of thinking about employee retention, one of the things is you get out of college, and I talk to folks who, that's more my age group. I see people get out of college and they can't get a job in this town. They have to kind of either hoof it for a while or go away and come back. And usually what happens is they go away. They love this place. They go away. I went to New York. And then we miss the place, but we've gotten our mid-level skill job someplace else, and then we come back. So you might always wonder, why do people always go away and come back? And I think it's because we're missing something in our economy that's really important, and it's that middle level. So I guess that would be input into thinking about job growth, to really be thinking about that middle level before professional, where people can actually stay in this community and start moving themselves up a kind of economic ladder.
We've Dan McCall, who's the president of the Bricklayers Union and the Building Trades Council for about 16 years, sits on our board. He's commented, and we've talked about, how do you get the word out to kids coming through high school? They're not seeing the kids coming through high school applying for the building trades, and that's one thing we want to try and assist in, because that's a good point. They're looking for more people, and those are fantastic jobs, and we play a small role in trying to help spread the word on that.
Okay, I think we should probably move on. We have people waiting to do their budgets.
Yeah, I think you just saw a group of kids come through here earlier tonight who are looking for an opportunity. The school districts are looking for people to help teach it. Parkland has a program. I know that in conversations with the school district in Urbana, there's a clear need, and I think Danielle does strike a point. That those entry-level jobs for young professionals are few and far between, and if we do really want to attract the high tech, we need to have something similar. We need to do something to keep some of these. I just watched two of my best students take jobs in Seattle. One went to Microsoft, one went to Amazon. Okay, I mean, the quality of the graduates that come out of our program here are top notch. They're being hired by the best companies. So we've got to compete against that. It's tough. So what do you have to offer those kinds of that kind of talent in this town? And Urbana is a very tolerant community, and that is something we should be selling.
Could you possibly give us a list of the jobs that you think you've retained, either through attracting new businesses or getting existing businesses to expand, and particularly impact on Urbana?
It's sometimes, we can do that. It's
Okay,
sometimes difficult to do. Among our retention visits, we call on the water company and we call on the News Gazette. Well, they're not going to go anywhere. But it's important to know what issues are that are concerning their. So retention is a broad term, but we can certainly give you a list of where those efforts have been and what successes we've had.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks for
Thank
listening.
you. Still takes.
Okay, we have 3 budgets that are on the agenda. Then we're supposed to have other departments, time permitting. I'm not sure what those other departments are, but let's start with Public Works. Bill Gray, our Public Works Director.
Thank you. Before I get started into the operations budget, I just wanted to let you know that after this presentation, if there are questions related to the capital improvement plan that was presented last Monday, I have staff members here to answer those questions too if they come up. But for the operations budget in Public Works Department, I'd like to kind of cover 3 general areas: personnel, non-recurring costs, and kind of operational costs, and kind of hit on some of the highlights. And unfortunately, usually those highlights are where we've seen some large increases or where we've seen some significant changes. With respect to personnel, the first item I'd like to go into some detail is an exciting change that we're looking at in the operations division. Later this year, we're going to have a supervisor in the Public Works Department retire after over 30 years of service. And what we're looking at is restructuring the operations division and not replacing that particular position, but reorienting the responsibilities with the remaining 3 supervisors. And what we're going to do with that position is we're recommending to hire a full-time maintenance worker, which is an entry-level position in Public Works, and then look at other aspects of where we can best do the most with the money that we have for that position, and yet perhaps accelerate or enhance other aspects in operations. And what we're planning to do, besides this maintenance worker position, is help out in the electrical section. We have electricians, which are some of our higher paid bargaining unit folks, doing activities that could be done by lesser paid or skilled individuals, namely installing and removing banners, for example, or locating utilities, which are part of the Julie response system. And we're looking at, in and of themselves, they don't necessarily require a full-time person to do that, but we're looking at contracting out those types of activities. They're maybe in the order of $5,000 or so each. And we would free up then essentially a couple thousand hours per year of electricians' time to do other, what I would say, very important activities as far as maintaining our street lighting system, our traffic signal system, installing new street lights, better maintenance activities in that area. At our last meeting, I think it was Danielle had raised a question about the age or light levels, or maybe it was Mr. Lewis in the north part of town, and these are areas that we can do better in addressing, cleaning globes, cleaning the glass lenses and things of this sort, or replacing lamps on a more scheduled basis rather than when it burns out you replace it, maybe do it more systematically and more efficiently. So that's one area that we're looking at doing. Also, the aspect of permitting, of right-of-way permits, would be shifted slightly, and this leads into another position that we're looking to go from three-quarter time to full-time, and that is our secretarial staff. And we would be recommending to go full-time to from a three-quarter time position, and the secretarial staff would be playing more of a role in the administration and issuing of permits for right-of-way permits. We would still have an inspector do that work, but some of that responsibility would be removed from the operations division. Another position that we're looking at recommending going from three-quarter time to full-time is the environmental aid or recycling coordinator position. This would, if so approved, would help with upgrading and replacing and cleaning and the various toters that we have out in the community, whether it be for single family or for multifamily. This position, of course, services the day-to-day needs when we have new residents or needs for replacements, does various studies and surveys that we take from time to time and do various study work for the environmental manager. Also helps out from time to time with even our environmental control officer, especially if there's any vacation time or that sort of thing. So those are some of the three main changes that we're recommending in personnel. This would result in essentially a 0.5 or half an FTE increase into the Public Works Department's budget. If you have any questions, please stop me along the way. Next is one-time expenses, and we're looking to provide $25,000 for new carpeting for the second floor in the city building. It's probably getting close to 8 to 10 years old and is showing its wear and tear, and that's a recommendation that would be handled by the Public Facilities Division. We need to change out for all our sirens that provide warning to the public. The emergency warning activation system needs to change, and this is occurring because currently the signal that goes out to activate the sirens is analog type signal, and we're going to be upgrading all the radio systems in police, fire, and public works to a digital system and signal, and similarly the sirens will need to have that new activation equipment, and this is about a $21,000 expense. Also, we're recommending a $31,000 contract to update our tree inventory in the city. The current inventory is over 10 years old. It was done last. In fact, DOS software was our operating systems is what the system operates on, and we'd like to get to the 21st century here, and actually the type of Update would also be compatible and would go, at least per plan, seamlessly in our GIS system as another layer that we have at the county level that maintains those records. But this is a very labor-intensive situation where you need to go literally walk block by block and do a variety of field entry on trees and updating. But the fact that it has been done once, we will then update it ideally this year or next year in the next fiscal year. Other large increases, these are more annual type increases. Our gate fees, our dumping fees are increasing considerably. We're looking at over a $9,000 increase to close to $70,000 a year in gate fees. Our utilities are jumping over $100,000 to almost $430,000 annually, large increase. Our leaf and Christmas tree collection program, we have 4 pickups in the fall, 2 around the holiday season and 2 in the springtime, is increasing by over $15,000 to $71,000 a year. And again, that's very labor intensive and fuel related, so that's a recommendation. And then a new item, or fairly new item, now that we have our leachate treatment facility up and going at the landfill, we're going to have expenses annually now for electricity and UCSD sewer fees and sampling and such, and that's going to be over $12,000 a year expense that will be pretty much in perpetuity. As those expenses may go up somewhat, we'll have to adjust the budget accordingly. So there's some of the more significant operating related costs. So you may have some questions looking through the Public Works budget, but those are some of the highlights with respect to personnel matters, with respect to one-time expenses, and some of the more significant operating expenses. We also are seeing, of course, large increases in fuel costs, and it's for obvious reasons.
Dennis Roberts.
Thanks, Bill. Your department's got just a lot, wide-reaching in its duties and responsibilities. I mean, everything from leaf pickup to major construction of highways. That's mind-boggling. I just have maybe a few questions. And actually, one of them you already answered was about the leaf pickup. Apparently, that's a pretty popular program. You're just pursuing demand by increasing what you think the expenditures for that.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
So you're taking them to a recycling site. It's not so much transportation as maybe staff.
Well, it's contracted out. We go out for bids, and we usually have a couple contractors that will bid on this, but it's basically a contractor that has a large packer truck, and it's a 2 or 3 person situation, and every year that unit per hour cost just rises, 80, 90, 100, 110, $120 per hour, and it just keeps on going up, and it's his labor and fuel equipment costs go higher. We see those costs rising, and yes, there's some tipping fee increases, but for the most part, it's to keep the program as is, no reduction in level of service. But if we want to keep it as is, with the number of pickups I outlined, then that's going to be over a $15,000 increase to our budget. In fact, we're overspending our budget this fiscal year.
When we see the repeated items called uniform rental, what actually does that entail to employees at the city?
A couple things. Barb Steele administers that program for us. We have multi-year contracts where our public works employees, folks, maintenance workers, equipment operators, people, mechanics, whatever, we provide uniforms for. And it's usually so many changes, 10, 11 or so slack shirts. I don't have all the particulars, but I can get those if you'd like from Barb. But and then other supervisors, we provide some shirts for seasonal part-time people. We provide shirts for too. Usually they're orange or greenish yellow or some kind of high visibility color, so that they don't need to wear a vest on top of a shirt, but that kind of is the same as wearing a vest and high visibility when they're working out in the right of way, that sort of thing. So Those are the costs. That cost, quite frankly, hasn't gone up all that much through the years. It's been fairly stable, all things considered.
Employees are not required to just come in appropriate dress or purchase their clothing and wear the clothing themselves. They actually have supply that comes to them.
Correct. Yes, they can choose to have laundered. Some choose not to have it laundered, but that is something that is available for people. Laundered shirts and pants, slacks too.
And then, the charges for nuisance abatement are very moderate. I do know that it's one thing that I do get calls on personally. A lot of people say, "Hey, this is like I see noise levels or parked cars or something." Is it mostly a staff cost or equipment?
Maybe I need to know what line item, but if it's for nuisance abatement, if it's contractual related, it's not cars related, it's not necessarily staff, but it's contractors that will come and abate a junk pile or what have you, and or it could be mowing, for example, high grass, weeds. They charge so much an hour or such and such size lot. And that's, through Rod Fletcher and Jason Aerosmith will handle those types of matters. So it's usually a contractor mowing or a contractor waste hauler. Am I missing anybody else, Rod? Or? No, it's mostly those two that will who respond to those types of issues.
You do a great job, and I just can't help it.
But it's the people behind me that do the great job. They're
Danielle Chenoweth.
3 questions. I'll try to be brief. Question number 1 is there anything that you all are doing in terms of planning to mitigate rising fuel costs? Number 2, I know we plan on hearing back from you in terms of the council goal to expand recycling to other waste forms than just personal households like commercial waste and construction debris. And I don't know if that has an impact on this budget, but this council only has 2 more years and there's only 2 more budgets. So I'd like to know about the role of that in this budget. And 3, we're talking about doing a identity campaign, which I think would involve Public Works to some degree, especially if we do banners throughout all the different places where there could be banners, possibly a kiosk and signage. Now, I know it's rough and up in the air, but where's the pot that we would be able to pull from for that? So it's fuel costs, commercial recycling, and things like banners and kiosks that might come out of our identity campaign.
If I could ask maybe Larry and Rod to join me. As far as fuel is concerned, I think that's part of our report. We plan to talk to the council in July or the summer timeframe on sustainability. But I know Larry keeps a close tab on fuel efficiencies and for vehicles, future vehicles to be purchased, what have you. But I know we have some hybrid vehicles, and we're looking strongly at perhaps replacing other vehicles like that with hybrid vehicles. But I don't know if you have more to add.
Council's direction several months ago, and then fuel conservation, we started looking at other towns that they have available, doing that research, brainstorming our own, kind of identify fuel conservation. Some of the key components will be, which is the pages attached here, our driving habits of our employees. Idling is one of them. Jackrabbit starts, things of that nature. You can read that in the second part. We're looking at setting conservation goals with each department head, trying to actually set goals to reduce the fuel usage, not just say that we're going to conserve fuel. We want to monitor it. We can readily monitor how many gallons. Right now we average about 110,000 gallons total fuel, diesel and gasoline per year. We can actually set through the department heads goals that we would like to see reduced Ways we can reduce that is just identifying potential vehicles for alternate fuels. Biodiesel is one, compressed natural gas, E85, which we have 8 vehicles in the fleet already being fueled on that fuel. Hybrids, we have 2 hybrid vehicles in the fleet. We're looking this year at parking once again. Both of their vehicles are up for replacement, and we'll be strongly looking at hybrids for them to reduce the fuel usage. Pure electric vehicles, I know the university is starting to use those. Other things are identifying potential vehicles to downsize or eliminate. One of the ways to conserve fuel is get rid of vehicles. We'll take a real close look at vehicle utilization, see which ones can or can't be deleted from the fleet. Promote carpooling wherever we can, either whether it's employees coming to work or carpooling to different meetings we have around town, starting to think in that lines of work. Working with information services on enhanced telecommunications, perhaps some of the things that we go to see in person, whether it's in Champaign or other towns, could be handled by enhanced telecommunications, video conferencing, things of that nature. I know we do that with APWA now. Instead of going to conferences, a lot of them are over the web. We've taken advantage of those, and you get 50 different cities all interacting with each other through that. Promoting non-traditional business transportation, cycling, walking, mass transit. There's several towns. I just seen one where the city of Springfield is using the Segways in their police department now. I know the city of Chicago has used those for years. Like I say, just kind of thinking outside normal squad cars, maybe other ways during the summer or whatnot to get our police officers through the downtown area. And then also taking advantage of new technologies, lighting that takes less demand on the electrical system of a vehicle that will help increase gas mileage, lighter composite materials. Our latest van that we're buying for the building person that goes around town here and takes care of our buildings will be out of FRP, which is fiberglass reinforced plywood. It's a lighter material, more durable, not really more durable, but less prone to rust. That should help fuel mileage a little bit. And then just taking advantage of more fuel efficient options that we can get, downsizing engines in vehicles. Some of the new manufacturers are coming out with vehicles that, when you're on a highway, start to shut down certain cylinders to get better gas mileage. So what this is just more of a kind of a rough idea or a rough draft to start talking with department heads of what we can implement, what will work, what won't work, and then trying to draw up some plans between each department on what we're going to do to reduce our dependency on fuel.
Great, very thorough response. I appreciate it. I also really appreciate the goal setting. I think that's how you get places, is you set goals, and then there's lots of ways to meet those goals. So it's a very exciting report.
On the recycling issues, pursuant to Council's list of sustainability issues that you gave staff several weeks ago, we're looking into those issues right now. We will hope to have some information on feasibility on a number of those issues that you identified. In terms of commercial recycling, we also sent out recently a questionnaire updating our information from our questionnaire we sent out in 2002 to determine the extent of commercial recycling right now. We're assimilating that data now, and we'll have that information as well. We'll present that in July, I believe, is the timetable the council wanted that information. So we will be making some recommendations at that point in time, but our current budget does not include any of those issues yet because they have not yet to be identified.
Shirley Smith.
I guess, was there a third comment about identification or marketing, or is that?
Just the issue of what pool you would pull from. It may not be allocated in the budget, but what's the availability to, or maybe it's a CD question, not a Public Works.
probably we would look at TIF funds if it was TIF eligible, and in terms of the marketing studies, and we do have funds set aside for marketing, but we'd likely come back with a budget amendment. If these were improvements that weren't benefiting the TIF areas, then we might need to look at the Economic Development Fund. So that would be my thought. I don't know if there's anything within Public Works that would address that as well.
I have nothing recommended in the Public Works operation budget, yes.
Okay,
Sorry.
Robert, go ahead. Anything else? Robert Lewis, I think. Did I call on Charlie first? Or
Yeah. Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who's first here? Charlie?
A couple of quick ones. How is the marketing of materials from the recycling or from the landscape recycling going? I know I've seen more people getting stuff from it, and are we seeing a steady increase in use of that material? And
Mike Brunt, too.
thanks, Rod.
Year after year, we increase our product sales out at the Landscape Recycling Center, and I think our marketing campaign has helped us significantly. I don't have numbers necessarily tonight, but I can get those that show that our products are increasing from year to year. We continue to try to refine our products. We have 4 or 5 wood mulch products now, and we have our screen garden compost that we just created a educational piece on last year on that's titled How to Use Compost. So that particular campaign is targeting new subdivisions for the use of compost and integrating it into the existing subsoil before they actually install their landscapes. And if we can get that to go, we'll have a significant, again, another significant increase in the use of our recyclable products out there.
Have we ever thought about, selling it sort of retail at our local, I suspect all the local nurseries know about what's out there, but have we ever thought of retailing it through those locations?
We've studied that a little bit. We haven't recently gone to the local nurseries and say, hey, we have a product out here that we would like you to sell. So maybe we should readdress that here because we haven't looked at that recently.
Along the lines of marketing, before I get to my big question, the leachate treatment that we do we just collect the leachate and send it over to we don't do any treatment of it or anything, do we, or do we?
Yeah, no, there's aeration. There's kind of a trickling filter, and that helps take care of some of the volatile compounds in that leachate. But after that happens, that pre-treatment, if you will, occurs, then we do discharge it, pump it to a sanitary sewer, which goes right to the treatment plant. But that pre-treatment is necessary because otherwise we have certain compounds and VOCs or whatever, Gail can give you more specifics, that exceed the allowable limits that the treatment plant would accept, sanitary district would accept.
There's no way to use that same equipment or anything on a commercial basis to treat other leachate, is there? Or, is it totally defined for that quantity of stuff that's coming in?
Pretty specific for this type of leachate, that we're collecting at the landfill. I think the big thing is getting it, well, first of all, this facility has a certain capacity, and it's sized for the amount of leachate that's being generated, that's being collected at the landfill. But do you mean off-site?
If stuff were brought, yes. If stuff were brought to you, and then because you have the connection to the sanitary district,
you could probably elaborate. But maybe if there was something tanked and trucked, and maybe it'd be.
I'm just looking for ways of making money here. Just like with the
I don't know.
With the recycling, landscape recycling.
At the time.
The unit is specifically designed and permitted to treat that specific waste. It's considered an industrial waste treatment facility, and so it is. I mean, to bring something else in, you'd have to re-permit it, and also the capacity would not likely handle additional flows.
It's just very specific equipment then. Okay. My big question that I'm going to ask all department heads is one that I think a lot of people have been thinking about, was mentioned earlier tonight with respect to the economic development, which is employee retention. They do retention visits and stuff, and the other issues, employee retention, promotion opportunities, and of course the consequences of we have some longtime employees that are going to be retiring over the next 5 years, and I guess you've got one coming this year. So I'm curious how all three of those aspects are being addressed or are addressed in each department.
Well, the employee retention in Public Works, I think, kind of speaks for itself by the fact that the people in this room have been here, I bet you on average, 20, 25 years. So I guess it's a pretty good place to work for. The work is...
I'm thinking in terms of the younger staff, and like I said, again, the promotional opportunities, right, too, for them.
The last few years our turnover has been very low. We've had some retirements, which has been opportunities to hire some new people. I think a couple of years ago, Mr. Kelly told me that in the next 5 years there's going to be X number of supervisors retiring, and it's kind of a wake-up call for me anyway. And we've given a lot of thought on succession planning and try to provide some opportunities for training. It's a little bit tricky to get too specifics with only certain individuals and not others. We certainly make certain opportunities known, and if people volunteer and they'd like to go to a such and such training or conference, I think that's good, and it shows us a little motivation and excitement for maybe moving up within the organization. But certainly in these next 3, 4, 5 years, there will be vacancies, and we're hoping that there could be promotions from within, but typically we look at the outside too to see if there might be someone from the outside to come in too. So as far as promotion is concerned, we've been fairly constant, again, because we haven't had too many people leave the organization. We've had some hires in the engineering division in the last few years, and we've had 3 outstanding civil engineers join us. Jennifer Selby and Brad Bennett and Craig Schunkleider. These are very top-notch individuals, and I know I'm thinking that looking at their future, they'd like to see upward mobility too, and we'd like to provide that for them here, or sometimes those opportunities end up elsewhere too, as we've seen with some civil engineers in the past. So just to pick on a few positions, I don't know how far you want me to get into positions.
Let me ask it this way too. In terms of the rank and file, would you say that in Public Works, are you above average, average, or below average in terms of turnover?
I think our turnover is extremely low.
So below, you'd think it's probably below average for your typical Public Works department.
I haven't studied other organizations to say how we benchmark or compare to others, but I think it's pretty low.
I think Robert Lewis is next.
Questions, Bill, and that has to do with, I know that all of us are considering energy conservation, and I'm thinking of our facilities that we own as a city. What do you have any programs in place looking at this building, for example, in terms of energy conservation, the mechanical systems, or any parts of them that lighting, LEDs, or those kinds of things that go on in buildings throughout our facilities that might have a significant impact in terms of savings over the next couple of years?
That's kind of an ongoing aspect. Larry touched on from the fleet standpoint, but Pat Paletti and his staff do look at those issues. And for example, I think we're starting to install more switches that are motion sensor to turn on or turn off within like a conference room type of setting. So we're looking to do some of that. We're installing where applicable and where it works more electronic thermostat situations so that we can dial down or dial up depending on the season of the year, heating and cooling to save money that way. I know that we're been installing where we can, if we don't have fluorescent lighting already, some compact fluorescent lighting if there's incandescent lamps in certain areas. So things of that sort we're looking at. We're having a University of Illinois, I forget the, thank you. The Waste Management Resource Center is going to be conducting energy audits of all our buildings. We're paying for that study. I don't think they've started yet, but Pat and his staff will be working with those individuals. We hope to get a report from them in the coming months, and that should provide us some real concrete examples of where we can maybe look at more energy conservation.
Great. That's good. That's great to hear. The other one, I don't know if you can answer it right now, but if I looked at your budget, and if it were me, and I'm sure you have plenty of experience, is there anything out there in the next couple years that you think might have a significant impact on your budget?
Well, rising fuel just jumps out as number one because, I mean, it impacts, the vehicles that we currently fuel with, unleaded or diesel fuel, but it impacts, material costs in such a high way, and I talked about this even a week or so ago. Our road construction projects and related material costs are going very high, and our revenues are flat. In fact, tonight's News Gazette had a very interesting article about funding the federal highway transportation bill, and it's that same. You could change federal to state, and you could change the state to local. Those are the same issues that we have, is flat revenues, and our costs to construct are going higher and higher, and yet the gallons that we sell are somewhat fixed or finite, or maybe decreasing, and our cost, our revenues are generated on a per cents per gallon situation.
Is it possible? Is it possible for you to put a contingency on your budget? Is that possible? For unforeseens?
There really isn't much contingency in our budget for unforeseens, and usually when we have an unforeseen, we end up doing a budget amendment ordinance, later in the year. I mean, the public works staff knows that if we're not talking about it right now tonight in the budget before you, then essentially come July 1st for the next 12 months, it isn't going to happen until July 1 of 08. So we try to be very careful and look down the road. Now, we know that there's some aspects that we're still working on, and maybe through this energy audit, for example, we may come back with some recommendations to change such and such to an HVAC system, and we couldn't anticipate it. And the return on investment might be 2 years. You want to spend that $20,000 now to get that payback,
Sure.
There are some studies that are ongoing that unfortunately we're not just far enough along. We talked about this maybe get more capital improvement related, but beautification of North Cunningham Avenue, beautification of South 50 Road. We just don't have enough information right now to say these are some dollars we need to put in there, but we'll be making some recommendations in those areas very shortly, for example. But get back to your question, though, as far as the next few years, what are some threats, if you will, in the public works? I would say that by far is the biggest one. And I guess we all appreciate your interest in employee retention, and I think just the fact that wages, salaries are continuing to go up, and we want to stay competitive with other folks that we're competing with to retain our staff.
Thank you.
Brandon next. Who's next, you guys? We're working on the honor system here. I think Brandon Bauer-Sykes is next.
Thanks. First, Larry, Rod, thank you. I'm really glad to hear about the fuel conservation ideas. I'll be interested to learn more about the commercial recycling and things that Rod reports back with in July, and the energy audit. That's all wonderful. My one additional question that other people haven't asked is I wonder about, in the budget, the implementation of the Bike Master Plan, and whether there's any funds either budgeted or just programmed in the budget operations or in the CIP for the implementation step.
We've got, do we have Main Street? Is that in there?
We dropped one project from the list. We pretty much kept everything that we had last year, so there is funding. So once we do have the study out, we can go back and start maybe reprioritizing, but we didn't reduce the funding that we had, and we've actually increased in some places in the projections of bike lanes, excuse me, on streets such as Goodwin Avenue is in there. We're projecting them on Main Street, possibly Washington, and so forth. But there is some funding in the capital improvement projections. And there actually, as far as next fiscal year, I don't think there's anything in there except for Goodwin Avenue, and that would be with the grant and so forth.
Okay, I guess one thing maybe I'll have some more conversations with you about. Last year, we, after some discussion, added to the budget the $35,000 to do the bike master plan, and Bill and Public Works recommended that, and the mayor supported it, and then the council unanimously supported that, and I think it's gone wonderfully. The public turnout at the session was great, and the process continues to make a plan. But I do want to give a little more thought and have some more conversations about whether we need to earmark or lay out specific funds to do implementation. I know part of the concept we've talked about in the last 2 years about it was, let's do a plan where there will be a short-term and a long-term implementation, and the short-term can be that we could really create bicycling facilities with just paint and signs that are really relatively cheap, much less expensive than concrete and asphalt. And so I'll maybe be talking to you some more, and just want to make sure that we have the budget to do that easy, relatively inexpensive, short-term implementation piece of the plan.
Again, it was a bit premature for us to speculate in those areas, and we really need the master plan to be completed. And I know we'll get into specifics and recommendations and such, and I can pretty much, a year from now, we'll have a lot more specifics than we do now. So, but I think as I look over the horizon for the next 12 months, we have a lot of related. Goodwin Avenue is a good example, but if we, well, Illinois Street is the summer, as Doug is mentioning to me, but also we're applying for a safe walk route to school funding, 100% funding. If we are successful there, there's a lot of, not necessarily are we hitting specifically bicycle, but pedestrian-related facilities, signage, striping, bump outs, at virtually every school site, from the high school down to the elementary schools. So we're very active and going to be very busy these next 12 months, and I think once the plan is done for the bicycle plan, we'll be in a better position to get more specifics and know what those costs may be.
Dennis Roberts.
Really, all I wanted to say was that I noticed that in the last year or so, you've really been more proactive and resourceful in landing matching grant money or finding grant resources to do some extra works that are on the capital improvement plan. And one of them that I remember is the arboreal conservation and maintenance tree trimming grant that was landed by, the Mike Brunk and his department, that really gives us extra services that we might not have been able to afford otherwise. Okay. And you talked about the school-related pedestrian safe walkways grant, and there have been others. And I just think that's like and I imagine that everybody's actually reviewing their grant availability lists at this time because of the costs in maintaining city facilities and services. But historic preservation grants for maintaining some of the old sidewalks, all the things that you guys do to help alleviate the complete costs on the city's back is greatly appreciated, and I think that's a really wonderful thing.
We've got great staff. We react very quickly. People in this room will do what it takes to seek those grants if we're made aware of them. We're very aggressive, and I think the key is, like anyone else, you want to use other people's money as best you can. So to leverage our limited dollars, and I think through the years, Urbana has done that in all departments in a very good way, and as costs increase, you want to look and find those dollars. So we're very aggressive in trying to seek grants, and yes, I think if you look through the CIP and the budget over the next couple, 3 years, there's a lot of money coming from other sources. Not to mention, this gets into CIP a little bit, but we're doing more partnering with the University of Illinois than we've ever done, and I think it's a mutually beneficial partnership in sharing costs, like on Lincoln Avenue, to do roadway improvements or signal improvements, or Illinois Street to upgrade Illinois, or Goodwin Avenue, and we have at least some verbal commitments that they'll probably also, with the street lighting situation, help pay for the street lighting on campus, that we need to replace a series of lighting. So these types of relationships weren't necessarily there as recent as 5 years ago, but I think through mayor and leadership talking and saying we have mutual problems, how can we solve them, this has been very helpful, Chancellor's office, et cetera. So.
Bill, I wanted to ask you one question about the motor fuel tax. There's supposed to be a little bit of a sales tax on there. I think they said 1.25%. Does any of that go to local governments, or does it all go to the state?
I'm not aware of us seeing any of that, to my knowledge.
Yeah,
but,
okay. All right, any other questions for Bill?
Are there any capital improvement plan? I mean, Doug is here, and Gail. From last Monday, did we pique any questions? I think we pretty much laid out what's going to happen the next 12 months or so, which is probably of, hopefully there's no concerns there, but if there's any CIP and if there's other questions in future weeks, we can try to address them then too, or email me.
Dennis Roberts.
Yeah, I had one. We have talked, and maybe it's been somewhat informal, about looking at the downtown, the street laning, and possibly going, from 4 lanes to 3 lanes, as we had done on Lincoln Avenue. Thinking about possibly changing the parking, considering herringbone parking in the downtown area, adding potential more parking spots with the meters to serve customers in the downtown area. Do we have, maybe that's not really your department, you'd be involved in it from the engineering point of view, but I guess the earlier part's going to be the question of, is there going to be any design money coming forward to initiate that project? And I don't know if that's something you can address, or probably somebody else.
I think really as part of, it's going to be folded in with the discussion in the bike plan, in fact, that very topic. Okay. We know if we were to do a conversion to 3 lanes, we could include bike lanes downtown and keep the curb and gutter, right where it is. If we're to do bump outs or increase the width of the sidewalk, then we would have, different compromises, I guess would be the best word to use, if that was to be a decision. Not to mention an exceedingly higher cost. But those sorts of discussions, I think we're going to have here soon, and see where we go.
So that's in our minds, and we're thinking about it.
We're thinking about it seriously, yes.
Great. Thank you.
Danielle Chenoweth.
I guess jumping off what Dennis just said, I think my comments about the CIP have less to do with what's scheduled this next year, which I think is very appropriate, and more those kinds of anticipating what the next steps will be. And I do know you have the desirable projects not scheduled, which are very specific, and that's probably why they're missing some of the more kind of vague things. But I do think as we're moving into this next fiscal year, there's basically 3 things that we have to have on the horizon that are pretty vague, but that need to come into clarity. And the first is downtown. I think that, Champaign did it, Campus Town did it. It's time for downtown to be pedestrian friendly as well as bike friendly, and for us to really look at that complete streets. And I know you know that, but that's going to take some money in terms of altering the streetscape. The second has to do with the arts. The Arts Task Force has been meeting in earnest, and the task force has kind of come to the conclusion that it's going to take longer, we think, than the 6 months we thought it was to get this together. And so it looks like it'll really be the next budget cycle, but we should have something for the council to look at, say, around the Christmas holiday season, and if we're able to approve something, then it would, trying to sync up with next budget year, be able to figure out how that impacts the CIP in particular, and perhaps the general fund. And the third has to do then with the bike master plan, which of course you know, but and I think of those three, the bike master plan already has pieces of it in this, and I'm really both impressed and pleased to see what's on the horizon. In some ways, I think this gets keep talking about this identity campaign, because I really want to push for the fact that it's things like that bike plan that really help us sell Urbana. It's things like us, even if we're not able to spend it immediately. Oh, I forgot something. When I said downtown, in terms of narrow streets and complete streets, but also the concept of having some kind of plaza, which was in our original downtown plan. And I think that might be combined with our Boneyard study. It might be separate. If it's separate, then we're really looking at three big expenditures of funds. One is narrowing the streets or making it more pedestrian friendly. Two is the plaza, and three is Boneyard. But those things really have to be on the horizon. They're expensive projects. They're really important for quality of life issues and identity issues, and the challenge is going to be how to fund it. So I guess, I look to your leadership in terms of how can we start really making projections for that. I mean, I know we have a savings account, but
just to relay one thought, when we talk about downtown complete streets, or, well, just leave it at that. Broadway Avenue is an obvious transformation waiting to happen, but yet we're reluctant to do anything there because of the potential for redevelopment either side of Broadway Avenue. So we're kind of poised and ready to pull the trigger and do something, but I don't know, maybe it's a chicken or egg thing, but we have had these discussions with community development and engineering, and I think there's some neat things you can do with that street in keeping with the concepts you're talking about here, but do we want to jump out in front of redevelopment, or should we wait for maybe some redevelopment before we do our thing? So that's a little where the apprehension is, at least on Broadway, on a street like Broadway. So anyway.
I agree completely. I think that we need to be sensitive to what might happen on Broadway. We don't want to be tearing stuff up. I'm thinking also Main Street and Elm Street, for example. It really does not make sense when we look at other cities and what the trends have been, and just our nearest neighbors, Campus Town and downtown, that Elm Street is 3 lanes wide. Like, it just... And that people are pushed onto these really tiny sidewalks along Jumers where they're practically in the street because there are these little thin things on either side. It just makes no sense to me. That's an old way of thinking about how traffic should flow. Same thing with Main Street. Main Street is a chicken crossing. It is dangerous. I've been down there for years now. I've crossed Main Street so many times to try to get my Mirabelle's bread, etc. It is not a friendly environment, and I think that built environment has been one of the biggest things hampering the downtown. It's not the only thing, but it's a really important component, because literally when you're on one side of the street, you have a strong disincentive not to go to the other side of the street. And so we've divided our downtown with a state highway. Every other downtown it slows people down when you go through the downtown. Every single other downtown, we want people to see the downtown. We want them to experience it. When I go down Neal Street in Champaign, I can't help but pull off, try to find parking, which is difficult downtown Champaign, cannot help but pull off and stay a while because things are so close to me, and there's that one-way street and it's thin. And I know it sounds silly, but that experience is so important for people to stay in downtown, and to see people on the street and to see activity makes all the difference in the world. And Main Street is a main drag for people to go through to get to the next step. And I just think that we're just making it really easy for them to pass through, and downtown is a blur. So, we have 2 more years with this potential, with this council, and I just would really like to see us step up to the plate with Main Street in particular, and with this, and there's some promising things with the Boneyard and with potential plaza that we could all kind of, roll these things together.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. Thank you.
Okay, next, Urbana Fire and Rescue Service. Oh. Okay.
So happy with Robert's been grants, but that's an area that I have not been all five of our departments, fire, police, and the library, have been very, very aggressive in looking at the city getting grants. I'm often the person that takes it up reporting and auditing, so communicating with the government officials and oversight agencies, and I've never heard of that word. In fact, they're always commending about how we handle our grants. They've all people that they get an idea for a new or innovative grant. One of the first cities they think of is Urbana because they've had such good luck.
I like that.
Okay, so who says that, Ron? The state or the feds?
Both state and federal grants,
we're famous.
We love those people.
Good evening.
Good evening. Chief Rex Munt.
Thank you.
Urbana Fire and Rescue. Go ahead.
I believe you received a packet. What I prepared for you here is the first couple of pages is a quick, if you want to call it an executive summary. The rest is if you wish to go through and read for details and ask questions later, or we can go into a little further this evening. This is actually quite an exciting year for Urbana Fire. We're having a chance to get in some areas we have not done in quite some time. So let me take you through the basic areas of our program. First, and where we have the most significant change this year is in our 100 series, and the number one item we've discussed, and this will be the third year, is overtime. And there has been a significant increase in funding to offset one of our issues, our third vacation slot, that really does relax things for us and allow us to operate. If you go further in the packet, and I'll just refer you to it, but the third section back, you will have a detailed program budget I prepared for our fire department this year. This is very important for us in many ways. Certain aspects of our fire budget, the majority of the fire department's overtime budget is non-discretionary. I have no control over it. But there are a lot of areas of programs and increasing our accountability. Both areas of discretionary and non-discretionary is going to be a key issue for my service both to you this coming year as well as to our own staff. I think it's very important that we watch our programs, monitor how we're doing this overtime and where we're doing it, and being able to forecast better in the future for our council and as well as for our organization. Real quickly, just to take you through what you'll see is that we have broken down fire prevention programs, and every one of the major programs that Division Chief Foster puts on the street for us has its allocated budget. And we'll be working within that budget, and we will not exceed those budgets. And if they need more, they have to come in on bended knee to see if they can convince me to make a change. Otherwise, this is what we work with. An important aspect for us this year is the fire training overtime. Two important things is, one, we're trying to stabilize and improve our fire training we conduct that we have for our personnel, especially at the Fire Service Institute at the university. We've fluctuated over the last several years with different issues within our overtime, and we're wanting to support our firefighters and encourage them to get back on and get going back and get their training they can secure out there. We train exceptionally well in-house, but the Fire Service Institute brings in the specialized training. The other side of it is something that we've been wanting to do for several years, and we're breaking ground this year, and that is bringing back our key lead instructors for our in-house training to improve safety and improve continuity of a training skill across all three shifts. So this line, specialized instructor, is the first level. I was asked many years ago to start this, but it was really a universal statement. We should do it for everything, and I don't agree with that. But we're going to be working in areas where we have our specialists, and they'll be training all three shifts, and we have good continuity of how we operate, regardless of which shift or how the shifts are blended because of vacations and so forth. Everyone has exactly the same training. And we believe it's going to increase the safety aspects tremendously. Another key thing that we've struggled with, and this is the first year for us to really break this down, is our emergency medical services training program. We have now, within this budget for the first time, allocated funds for all levels of EMS training, and they'll be in there fixed from this point on. Our EMTI program, which is our cornerstone and our leading program for emergency services jointly with our ambulance services, now has a budget that we will be working forward to have allocated funds, so because of the EMS training is up. The state of Illinois, working with the national standards, doubled its standards for EMTI training. They went from basically a $5,000 overtime program to a $10,000 program per student. We have one student online next year. That person is planned for. It's covered in the budget. We're going to take care of this. We're going to do it. We will not waste overtime if we don't have to, but if we need to cover that person or backfill that person or send them to the hospital for clinical time, it is all planned. The training will happen on time like it should be. This one individual this year is late in the process, and we're going to get that person up to speed. And then from this point on, our EMS students will be receiving their training in a very timely manner. And we'll be able to come to you on an annual basis and say, how much do we need next year for 1, 2, or 3 students, because we'll be able to know. Because of retirements, we can plan, and then if we're a little over, we're fine, then we can have a little extra surplus to turn back. One more thing we're doing this year that we're getting back to is recognizing those paramedics that work for us. We're an EMTI licensed service, but we have a number of paramedics who on their days off also serve with their local services as a paramedic. They can function once the local ambulance arrives on scene, and they can serve as a paramedic. We used to always support those folks in their recertification. It's not that costly, but it was one of those corners that we cut a few years back. We're bringing that back because we really have a belief that all levels of EMS training in our department provide service directly to our citizens in the street. The next major thing that is very critical for us is establishing for our technical rescue team quarterly training. It's like our SWAT team with law enforcement. These are specialized skills, very, very dangerous operations that we have to make sure our team trains routinely. We do not have the sky falling kind of a thing where we're always worried about having the calls, but the thing is that we're always subject to that call, both locally for accidents where things might happen on a construction site, or those bigger ones where we get called out across the state to different. We are within the state plan and need to maintain our skills. So what I've established here is quarterly training for the full team, 2 days a year for the full team, and 2 half-days for the full team. That's a quick overview, as well as with the third vacation slot funding that ranges about $35,000. This thing is a leap forward for us tremendously to allow us to take a deep breath and move forward in our training and our safety aspects of our organization. Back to the overview. After this, we have supply increases. The 200 series of our budget is really generally operational increases. There are small ones in there. Where we have some significant increases as we get into contractual side. We have our MedCAD contract. As you've heard over the years, things have changed with cell phones and the landline or hardline phone surcharges, and they're still trying to fix those things. And with the upcoming implementation of the 800 radio system, that MedCAD user fees are going up. And so we had an 8% increase this year, and they foresee that continuing for a number of years. And so that's part of our thing we have to take care of. Where we get into, if I want to say, the fun stuff, the interesting new things and new ground for us this year is getting into our equipment and program purchases. First thing, and I'm very, very appreciative of this, as well as our department, for the first time, as far as we can think, we're going to be getting into updating some of our fire stations. Key thing, for the first time, we are going to be putting emergency power in 2 of our fire stations we've never had emergency power in. And we're going to get that taken care of. That really was long overdue. When we get into beyond that, we're doing the most of the work that will be planned with Public Works, with Pat Paletti and his personnel, and Bill Gray, is looking at our Lincoln Avenue Fire Station. Where we're at a number key issue. We may do in both stations, again, north and south, is seeing if this budget will carry restroom facilities to modernize those and accommodate our female firefighters. We're not necessarily doing as well as we should in that arena, and we're going to correct that. Beyond that, it's getting into some good updating of the living conditions in the North Fire Station, and hopefully we can continue on down the future in future budgets to do that for the South. A smaller item is what's called the Knox box system you see here. We've been running with a system that is a joint system. Both Champaign-Urbana runs with this program that provides a good, secure method of gaining access into business and industry without having keys flopping all around. And Division Chief Jeff McDuffie behind me here recommended we moving this to the next level, and that is that we'll be wiring up the engines and establishing a key code access for our own personnel. We'll know exactly who pulls the key off the engine to make access into the building, and it'll be very difficult to leave the scene without putting the key back because there's a big blue flashing light on the dash. But it's one of those things that we think it's very critical to take our program and go further to ensure to local business and industries we're protecting their property. And also, it just saves us looking around looking for keys once in a while, which is rare, but this makes it much easier to avoid even having that happen. Fire prevention. We are being approved, hopefully, with your approval, purchasing a small trailer to increase our mobility of our fire prevention equipment and training facilities. So this is a small trailer, but it's really critical. We're always begging and borrowing vehicles and trucks and trailers trying to get things moved around, so this is going to clean things up for us. Another new item brought forth by Division Chief Mick Humer, who's our EMS officer, is what's called a CO pulse oximeter. This is really forward thinking, and we're only asking for one, and this is not normally at this present time carried by the ambulance services. But this would provide us the ability to rapidly diagnose if someone, either a citizen or a firefighter, is succumbing to CO poisoning. And so this is a nice, low cost. We're not going to be buying bunches of these. This is a good pilot project that probably will stay at this point, and we'll see where this goes. But it's a good advantage for us of protecting our personnel as well as making our CO calls in our city. Division Chief Tony Foster will be leading this next program, which is we're going to computerize our fire apparatus finally. This is critical for us to establish a consistent platform for our data entry, both in-house in the workstations as well in the street. With these computers, using our Firehouse software, everything, we reduce all training. Everything is consistent with how they work in the building as in the street. Phase 2 of this is hopes to go wireless. We really do need to go there because it'll provide us, and hopefully we can do this in the next budget, is providing us the access to material safety data sheets, to pre-plans of facilities. It's a phenomenal tool that provides us rapid information on the emergency scene, as well as being able to deliver our inspection data and so forth live back to the building or recovering any data we might need. Now, the final thing is something we've discussed for 2 years in a row. And with your approval, we're looking at hiring a consultant to take us to the next step or establish the program of saying, where do we go in this city in the next few years for fire protection, station locations, and so forth. And this is a very important step. I hope to see this. We're going to, once if the budget is approved with this, is they will establish the program of researching for the right consultant or consultants. My goal is to see this being interactive. I believe it is critical that the department not just hire an individual to go do their work and come back and tell us. We need to be involved. Because I think it's how we plan our future officers. That's how we plan for the future, is having input. I think the council should have input and be involved with this and expressing concerns and letting this expert come back and say, what's the best package for this city? So that's in the budget, and I think this will work out beautifully, and we can move from this point on down the road. The pages behind here just give you a little more detail. I'm really open for any questions you have at this time.
Lynn Barnes.
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
The increase overall from this current year to next year is only 6.5%.
Yes.
So all those changes that you talked about only amount to 6.5% difference? That's good.
I would absolutely be willing to take more.
Okay, but I'm just,
okay.
There were a lot of changes. There was a lot of positive things. I was just surprised because I didn't see any decreases in any other line items.
No.
Okay. And that's fine.
If I could quickly answer that, we have, as the city as a whole, but fire has truly lived a very frugal budget process. There's very little inflation in any of our lines. We have lived that way. We have cut lines. We have cut it to the point we've hurt ourselves a little bit in communications, and we're not coming back up. There's small increases here in that line in communications. So, yeah, we pride ourselves that when you hear from us that we need something, we really mean it, and we're not just pumping it to ask for more.
Yeah, well, these changes sound very positive. Second question is, is it typical that fire departments would hire it's kind of like a strategic planner?
Yes.
Right? And would this include the consideration of like expansion and timing and, in terms of the growth of the city out east?
It runs in several ways. Yes, this is typical. It all depends. My original proposal was a much higher cost figure, and I think it was a good plan. But again, it's one of those issues is that you can only afford so much. Hiring a professional consultant is going to give you a good answer. That's there's no question to that. I asked for a lot higher expensive software and maintenance program that really was going to be a budget buster, and I respect that. I'd love to see us come back and visit it again in the future where we can have it on a day-to-day basis, really live research data available that way. This consultant, I think if we do this right, should be able to talk to us about an estimate of how we have an impact on our service delivery. Our biggest issue is, as the city grows, we have very good delivery today, but as we grow in our perimeters and the traffic flows increase, where we're giving in our 4.5-minute service response goal will start to shrink. That doesn't mean we're going to be failing. We're just going to have to find a way to establish those benchmarks out there in the soil. Is at what point should this city hear me say it's time to buy ground? I will say to you right now, there will be a 5th fire station in this city. I will not be surprised if we don't see it in 5 years. But it truly depends a lot on community development, how successful they are in economic development. I've been able to sit in many meetings within this city, and I've seen a lot of programs hit the table that never happened. And so we can only plan and have some kind of benchmark. We can come back to you and say, okay, it has reached this point. It is now reasonable to now seriously look at ground. We may come back in 3 years and say, no hurry, and we're fine. But we'll at least have reviewed it properly.
Robert Lewis?
You didn't mention the equipment status at this point.
That is in my closing statement of things I'm looking at that we need to talk about for the future.
Okay.
The status of our equipment right now is quite good, and we're expecting a delivery of an engine here in the next 2 to 3 months. But one of the things I've mentioned to the mayor in a recent report that we're going to have to work on here in the next month or so and start an extensive project on is reviewing the apparatus replacement schedule that's in place with our city, our VRF plan. And that could be significant. And it was interesting, it comes into play with fuel economy, it comes into play to services on the street. Do we make some changes in how we deliver services? We actively put firefighters on the street almost every day, doing inspections, public education programs, building pre-plans, all in our apparatus, our big engines. Should we be reviewing and putting another individual with Chief Foster in his prevention bureau in a hybrid vehicle driving around inspecting vehicles, inspecting buildings? Our ladder truck out here is a very expensive piece of machinery, and this is what came to surface, and we're going to be discussing over the next few months. How do we schedule its replacement? There is a long-term schedule placement of 25 years. I'm telling you right now, in my professional opinion, it will not make it. But the question is, what is the right year? We're going to have to sit down with Public Works and truly evaluate this and go to other cities and see how they're lasting. We are a very busy community in comparison. If you compare our annual runs to Champaign, who is nearly twice our size, we're nearly 80% of their runs. We're very busy here. And then you add, we are on the street in our non-emergency mode daily. The hours on our apparatus add up quickly. And so it's going to be a significant budgetary discussion we're going to have in the next, let's say 4 to 6 months, getting it finalized so we can talk about what the next budget will be.
Ron, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to expound on Ms. Barnes' question about the 6.5% increase. What that is we're referring to recurring costs in the fire department last year compared to the same recurring costs this year, and that would be basically salaries and supplies. And the reason that's above what we might think of inflation is mainly that overtime charge, which was quite large. All the other one-time expenses that Chief is talking about, the $125,000 for the public facilities and the study and the grant, all are being reported in the general reserve fund as non-recurring costs. The money's transferred from the general fund to that reserve fund, and that's where it's reported. And the reason I do that is because I think that's a better way. Otherwise, if we put all those in fire, it would look like their budget had gone up 30% this year, and then next year when they came out, it would look like it had been reduced 30%, and people would be wondering what the heck's going on. So it's a better way of reporting those one-time expenses.
Any other questions? Danielle?
Just a quick comment on the last thing you said about fuel efficiency. I was thinking about this because actually firefighters came out to my house as part of the regular tours. They discovered I had a battery missing from my fire prevention.
Did
what
it
is
just
it called?
mysteriously disappear?
The smoke detector, thank you. And so, I was able to put a battery in and probably, save a life 3 years down the road. What I did notice, although I'm sure it makes the kids really happy, that the big fire truck was in front of my house. And I thought, I'm sure in some ways this kind of lends credibility to the fact that you're a firefighter, not some crazy person who's coming and knocking on the door, and on the other hand, that's a lot of fuel. So then I thought, well, but if we buy a car, how long is it going to take to actually make up the difference for a brand new car for fire? And I think one of the things we do at the city, I think we could change our way of thinking about this a little bit, is departments get an allocation for vehicles, and it's your car. It's fire's hybrid vehicle, it's police hybrid vehicle. And it doesn't really make sense because some of these things, you could have a couple of cars and they could be checked out for different things at different times, sitting over here, instead of this idea that everyone kind of gets their exclusive car or whatever. So I'd like us to maybe consider, instead of the idea that everybody gets their own car and it's it's an old Ford, whatever we have, these cop car looking things, Ford Taurus, thank you. I don't know cars, but they all look like cop cars back there. And instead, we could get hybrids and we could actually have a kind of checkout system, and it could be totally automated. I mean, we got a great IT department, so you just have a calendar and you check out the car, schedule checking out the car, etc., and we have a car share within our pool. So it's something to think about, especially because when the police come up here, I'm going to advise that we put our parking enforcement on bicycles, so, to downsize the whole use of cars. So maybe you can use one of their hybrids instead.
Just to let you know, there is within this city a carpool system. And in fact, there have been times we've driven the mayor's car.
Oh, okay.
And so, but but you're saying is taking it another step.
No, I'm glad to hear that, actually. That's already a step in the direction.
That's because the mayor walks.
But her car is now red.
Well, neither's mine.
Oh, okay.
Charlie, are you next? Did you have a question too?
Well, I thought the answer was that the reason the equipment was out there in front was because they're on duty, right? Right. So
so if something comes up,
yes, that comes up, they take off, So
the statistician is so smart.
Well, that's, I'd be, if they were doing this on their day off as volunteers, then I'd expect them in, on bicycles. Okay. For the consultant RFP process.
Yes.
Okay, and so we'll be able to shape what goes into that RFP.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then the same question for you is employee retention, promotion, and dealing with long-term employees that have been here for a long-term time turning over. I can't think of a better way to put that one.
I'd have to say that we have been facing a low time the last couple of years, but I think it's a mixed package. We have lost a number of very good firefighters to Champaign. Recently lost a brand new hire. A young lady left us to go to Bloomington. But that's completely a different story. She's a paramedic, and they were gobbling up paramedics because they were going into the transfer service, and they wanted her bad, and she wanted to live in the area. I cannot blame her. I wished her well, and they were very, very fortunate. She was going to be a phenomenal firefighter. And so it was a good thing for her. But retention here, we are a very flat organization. And we have some conversations yet to go. I've spoken with the mayor a couple different times. And we have some ideas on the table. I think there's ways maybe in phasing, that we could do some restructuring in our organization without, again, hurting the budget significantly, but in understanding that we're going to ask more of the budget, and allow us to give some steps in our organization so our firefighters can see some possible promotions in their future. When it's simply an engine officer to a chief, to me, that's a very flat organization. That's how close I am to the line firefighters, which I'm proud to be, but that's why some of them leave. Because when you're very flat, and you have very slow turnover, and people get in, they're there for a very, very long time. So we have some more conversations we need to pursue to see what we can do. There's been a couple different plans floating around, and they both have very good things in them. But for us to retention, I will say this, is that we're looking and expecting a retirement this summer. And as far as I understand in my relationship with the city administration, we're going to be looking at an internal promotion to the best of my ability. And there's no reason not to. We have good qualified people, and our next chief officer is coming from this organization. The only reason that does not happen is they completely fail the test. And I don't think it's ever going to happen. We have good people, so we're going to promote within. So that hopefully is another step in. This is going to be a cultural period with our organization. The other side of this issue about our future officers is in the lap of our young members. They themselves have to prepare. No one pursues a career without investing in their career and developing and going to school, whatever it may be. We're giving our firefighters an opportunity to go to school every year, but that may not be enough. You need to go off and do some of your own investment in some more specialized classes. We'll get you where we can, but it's a team aspect to get someone promoted. But we're going to work on it.
Brandon?
Yeah, Chief Mund, I just wanted to thank you. I was one of those people in prior years sort of hounding you about, are we planning, and saying, we see how Public Works plans, right? They have the 15-year, every road project detailed out. And this year, I think, Fire has really stepped up to the plate to begin doing that level of planning for our future. I really support the planning consultant and us knowing how far out we can continue to expand Urbana before it's time to invest and to plan for stations. The remodeling and the cutting-edge equipment is really going to keep us at the cutting edge and being a great department. So thank you very much for responding to some of those questions, and I really support these advances.
Dennis Roberts.
Yeah. Rex, maybe this is just for a little bit of clarification of my thinking. When we're talking about promotional opportunities, and that you were saying that it's fairly flat, that from a serviceman to the fire chief, there's only a few positions open. Does that mean that maybe in other communities there are different kinds of task definitions which fill, or would there be? Could it be that there would be new kinds of intermediate positional staff positions created that would offer a little bit more flexibility and promotional in incremental steps due to the amount of responsibility a person takes on? Like, I know that I'm not really sure all of the positions in the fire department, but I know there are sergeants, right, and you said different kinds of officers. So is that something that might be evolved or developed to allow more steps of improvement in a person's career future path here in the community?
Yes, there is. I've been researching both ends of the spectrum. I've spoken to city administration for a number of years. The city, a number of years ago, had an assistant fire chief, and that position was abolished. I truly believe it's needed. We are so flat that we are running in every direction every day trying to manage all the aspects. At the other end of the spectrum, and that would be more than likely, depending on a plan, either a new full-time position or a variation of restructuring. At the other end on the shift, I think there's a true need of establishing what I've been calling the assistant shift commander. We need to improve the chain of command throughout and continuity when someone takes a day off. And I won't take you through that whole story, but we have issues we need to fix. We have a good training program that could go better. And we can combine that with this new position that's not even a new full-time position. It's simply a promoting an existing one. And do that for a reasonable amount of money. So yes, it exists. There's some good ideas out there, and I want to take you through the whole plan tonight, but The answer is yes, we can do something. The question is how much we can, absorb at one time budgetarily.
Well, I think it'd be very interesting to hear, maybe more discussion about internal restructuring. I could imagine there could be like a technical specialist who, basically brought not only fire service skills, but maybe technology skills, computer skills to the department. I mean, I don't know. You'd be telling me perhaps what you'd like to see, but...
Well, honestly, that is needed. And where I would want to see that occur if possible is the other area that we have a deficiency is in our prevention bureau. You go back 10 years ago with a much smaller population and much smaller activity, our prevention bureau had 2 individuals in it. Today we have 1, Chief Foster. He has a second person, but he works the campus only. And we need a technology individual within our department. We need more help in a lower cost vehicle to take the workload off our firefighters doing inspections, as well as off our chief who's doing inspections, so he can do more program development and more community involvement programs. So there is an arena there that we've also discussed some variables about restructuring that would be really important and very, very beneficial for us moving forward.
Well, I'm really curious about that. So maybe this coming year there'll be opportunity for you to increase the depth of your department in some way without necessarily making it a huge, giant financial experience for the city.
Yeah, there is a danger of going too big, and that we have to take this slowly, step by step.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, Urbana Police.
Good evening. Next year, I can assure you I'll have 3 lieutenants dressed up in uniform sitting back there because they looked really good. I'm going to try to be brief because of the time of night and then open it up for questions. Really a fairly modest budget this year for increases. The biggies, though, we have a couple of building issues. One is out at our range, which is located at the landfill. The building that we brought in the early 1990s was, at that time, a very old single-wide trailer. With volunteer labor, we knocked the walls out of it, made it one big room, and it has since deteriorated to the point where the floor's falling out, the windows are caving in, the doors won't shut. It's definitely in need of improvement. That is the $38,000 request in the budget. We think the best way to go with that, based on our current research, is to get a portable classroom, a used portable classroom. We've identified a source for those out of Indianapolis, and we think it's going to be quite affordable to remove the old trailer, bring in the portable classroom, and get by for a number of years. We use that facility for training, for cleaning of guns. Other agencies also use our range. So it's really a building that's used quite a bit. The other building-related budget item is our storage facility on Glover. We have some space allocated to us that we keep a number of items out there, and the security needs to be beefed up on that, and that's what that line item, or that's what that request is for. Some of the other highlights in the budget, finally, I have proposed, or I've advocated for many years, medical exams for police officers. For as long as I've been here, police officers have taken a medical exam the day they walk in the door and never again the rest of their career, unless they go out and do it on their own. I think it's extremely important for police officers to be tested on a regular basis. Right now we're setting it up every 3 years to get the basic medical tests, eye exams, hearing tests, to ensure that they're able to do their job. We have some additional training money in there. Most of the police training is done, department-wide training is done on overtime. Our training needs have went up for years. More recently, we have needed to do diversity-type training, customer service-type training, training on our policies and procedures, National Incident Management System type training. The list of things that we need to train on keeps growing, but the things that we routinely train on, we really can't drop. Shooting our guns, hand-to-hand combat, handcuffing, search and seizure law, things like that. So I have asked for that increase. Much like the fire department, MedCAD for us is going up 8% this year. For a number of reasons the fire chief already went over. I think I'll open it up for questions.
I wanted to ask you, didn't you get a grant from the state representative Jacobson?
Still up in the air.
Okay.
Still up in the air.
But that's for the building, so.
That was a $25,000 grant, which will offset the $35,000 project. So,
okay,
yes,
so it might be in the state budget, but you don't know yet? Is that what you're saying?
We don't know if we've gotten it. We keep submitting paperwork. Keep submitting paperwork. They keep saying, we're going to get back with you, we're going to get back with you. We're pretty hopeful that's going to come through. So $25,000 will be offset from the 35 that we're asking for here, or 38.
Thanks. Danielle?
Thanks. I have my primary question is kind of like the police question I've had every year for about 4 years, so I'm going to ask it again. The issue is that we have this tool, station adjustments, formal and informal, in which to handle disciplinary problems in the school system in particular, but with youth generally, that does not engage with the criminal justice system, especially the informal. I know the formal can kind of end up being part of someone's record.
Correct.
And we lack, last time I checked, the ability to really follow through, to follow up with all the station adjustments. We have one police officer in the school system between two schools. And the question, and now I understand that Champaign is contracting with RPC to provide some service, and in the past they've hired someone, Kate Halinga was someone who followed up with station adjustments. We still lack that. We still have problems in the school system, and I don't see that addressed in this budget, and I guess I had anticipated that either the social worker conversation would come back, or we would look at a contract with RPC, or what. So where does that stand?
The story on that, we have done a lot of research and discussion with the community, with all the community groups over the past year. The assistant chief particularly put together some thoughts on that. To begin with, our number of juveniles taken to youth detention center dramatically decreased over the past 2 years. I mean,
very happy to hear that.
Dramatically decreased. So then we're left with station adjustments, because if we're not taking youth detention center, there still has to be some mechanism, which is primarily station adjustments, to deal with those. We've restructured in our investigations section where we are able to broker the services for station adjustments. What Champaign is doing with the Regional Planning Commission is part, I think, of a larger initiative that the state's attorney and I have had a discussion on for many months. What I've always felt we need in this county, or at least in the Champaign-Urbana community, is somebody, not Urbana doing their own thing and brokering their own services, and Champaign doing their own thing, and then we don't know what Rantoul is doing, and there's very little communication, and it's a very disjointed process, and it always has been. That leads to part of the confusion. The state's attorney is trying to put together currently, whether it's a county-wide initiative, which will require funding from Champaign, to bring all of the agencies together, so there is one central depository to coordinate the juvenile justice issues with station adjustments throughout the county. The assistant chief can certainly comment on it more, but what we're finding is there's a large number of organizations in this community to deal with the station adjustment type issues. And we're getting better and better about reaching out and hooking up, if you will, our juveniles with the resources that they need. To some extent, though, those different organizations are competing with each other. They all have their own programs, some very unique, but they're also competing for the grant money and the federal dollars. So we need the coordination, and I don't think the coordination just within Urbana via a social worker is going to get us where we need to be. I did propose and spoke with the mayor and Bruce and Ron in my budget presentation about a second school resource officer to help broker those services, to help with the station adjustments, to help with the schools. I've had some discussion with the outgoing superintendent as well as the incoming superintendent about the possibility of joint funding for that second school resource officer. That is becoming the norm. Champaign certainly has done it for the past couple years. I read something in the newspaper just recently where the county school resource officer is now going to be partially funded by some of the school districts that they take care of in the county. I think there's a real possibility for that to happen. Recent activity at the police department and the schools have slowed those discussions down, Gene Amberg leaving, but I think there's a real possibility to make something happen there which will at least partially address the brokering of service, the station adjustments, and those type of activities.
Just a couple of follow-up questions about what you said. When you say you're working with local kind of social service organizations that can provide support, is there budget to do that, or are we relying on people to volunteer to do that?
Those social service organizations have their own budget. They're coming to us, literally meeting with us, asking for referrals of kids.
So that they can fulfill their kind of program commitments.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And to what extent are we referring? Is it all the kids who have station adjustments are being referred, or how many are being handled in-house? And when you say the investigations department, does that mean that someone from the investigations department actually is the person who interacts with the child?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And do they have training to do that?
Yes.
And what's the training?
They go to, some of them have been to Balanced and Restorative Justice, the seminar that was here in town. They're certified juvenile officers and other related training.
Okay. I guess, well, I mean, I'm glad to see some progress in that front and that there's been some real research. I know the assistant chief was working on that and we had some dialogue.
Yes.
I think the thing to watch out for is, I think as administrators and managers, we frequently think in terms of centralization because of efficiency, and I think, and that may be the way to go. I mean, it'd be interesting to look at what other communities do. When it comes, but also working with teens and having worked with teens now for 15 years, they can smell bureaucracy, and bureaucracies tend to slow things down so that the thing happens, and then and you know this if you work with kids, if you take too long for there to be a consequence, that consequence has no connection at all to the actual activity that happened. So it actually is, it could be the case that small is beautiful in this case. You know, that by having really local responses, for example, I was looking at, and I can't recall the city name now, but where the folks who were brought into the schools were not necessarily police officers, but were grandmothers employed who are the natural leaders within a neighborhood or a community employed within the schools. And I'll tell you, I mean, you go to Indian culture, for example, the way Indian mothers communicate with their children is through their eyes. They get one look. They don't have to say anything. There's a look. and that's it. The kids are put into check, and there's a particular culture there. And I think that similarly, we could look at how can we actually provide job opportunities for folks, for seniors, for people who are natural leaders who may, not necessarily have full-time jobs or want a full-time job, who could play that role. So I guess I would like us to look at the primary thing that needs to happen is that a child who is acting out needs to feel cared for.
Mm-hmm.
And bureaucracies don't always know how to do that.
Absolutely.
And so I think we've worked in a lot of ways to try to figure out how does a child feel cared for, because most of the time that's what's going on. They're doing something to test to see if anyone actually gives a shit, so to speak, really. And if nobody cares, then that's where they start. That's where they dig deeper into their their own hole, and then eventually they're 18, and all of a sudden they're not given the same kind of breaks. So I just want to say that I think that we're not there yet.
Oh no.
And I think in some ways it's out of sight, out of mind, and it's nice to at least have one officer there you can kind of see what's going on. But I feel like there's a problem that needs to be solved in a lot of different ways. And when it comes to criminal behavior, and I really want to discriminate between criminal behavior and child behavior. And I believe in Champaign, they have not always distinguished between child behavior and criminal behavior. And the reports of school resource officers are in some cases, it really should have been someone else involved. It didn't need to escalate to that point. And sometimes a school resource officer, actually because of their training, can escalate a situation. And we need to figure out how to distinguish who's the right person to intervene in a particular situation, what's the right set of skills to bring forward. So I'd really like to see us put the financial resources behind a solution where we reach out to kids, and the school district needs to pony up too, and we come together to figure out how to address kids early on in intervention and do these, and kind of circle our arms around a kid who has problems, and we can provide some solutions for that person. So I'm disappointed in some ways that we're not there yet, because it's been a long-term conversation. I'm disappointed. I also would really like to see us have some resolution on this issue in this next year.
Okay, if I could just respond to that or add, what we tried to do was not just get the police perspective here. Granted, we're the bureaucracy, we're looking at it from the police. The assistant chief and I have spent a lot of time dealing with community experts, the social workers at the schools, the school principals, the various groups, the Boys and Girls Clubs, Mental Health Center. Pat has the list, various counselors in town, about the best approach to this situation. Is it to get another social worker? Is it to get a second school resource? We're trying to bring in the various views, including speaking with the departments who had social workers and no longer have them, including talking to the social workers who are no longer employed by those agencies. So we're reaching out to whatever expertise we need to make an informed decision. And you're coming in about the school resource officer and sometimes looking at it through various eyes. I think in Urbana we have a very, very successful program with a school resource officer that may not follow quite the models of some other cities, maybe some who have just started recently. But the principals, the counselors, the people in the schools who truly have the connection with kids and know far more about the best options than I ever will, tell us we do a very good job with our approach, and they're giving us guidance. Now, certainly money is an issue. In a perfect world, we'd have a lot more police officers, a social worker, and a couple more school resource officers. So we're doing the best we can, prioritizing what we have, and we are certainly looking to the future.
Dennis Roberts?
Very quick.
I guess I'm still waiting to have a wish fulfilled, and that would be that we would receive a report, an annual report from our school resource officer that's in your department, as to the experiences they've had during the year, where the troubles and the solutions have come in dealing with the student life at the public schools at this time. I know we've talked about it before. I guess I'm sort of suggesting to you that it seems appropriate that now that the school year is coming to a close, it would be, I think, useful to the City Council, just for its overview of really life in our city, to get a report from the school resource officer. Can you do that for us?
Yes. We have had a number of turnovers in our school resource officer position in the past 2 or 3 years. One of the things that I have been concerned about with our most recent school resource officer, Tim McNaught, is exactly what you're talking about. How we're tracking what we're doing, what are the issues. I went to Champaign and looked at how they are tracking their information. They had some very good software that was available from the Department of Justice, and we've since recently gotten that software where we can track the activities of our school resource officer, the types of things they're becoming involved in, because quite honestly, in the past, we have not done a good job of tracking that. We've just been told we're doing a good job, we think they're doing a good job. We didn't have the hard data to provide. So I'll see what we can put together for this past school year. Certainly in the future, we've got the software, we've got the program, we've got the procedure to do that.
Thank you so much.
Lynn Barnes.
Just a very quick question. Do you anticipate requesting any officers next year?
I would anticipate at this point I would.
Okay. That's all.
Both police officers and civilian personnel, but I hesitate to sit here and tell you how many that's going to be. As of today, we have 55 authorized positions, and I have 46 working, available, fully able police officers. My goal, as it is every year, is to get caught up to and then assess where we need to go. I'm much better shape than I was this time last year when I sat before you. I was in the 39, 40, 41 range of a working police officer out of 53. So this year, today, I'm at 46 out of 55. So it's an improvement over last year. My sincere desire is that by next year we'll be much closer to the 55 and have a better handle then on where we need to go.
Charlie Smith.
So my standard question tonight, retention, turnover, promotion, how are we doing compared to other departments? And
unlike the other department heads, I actually had time to sit there and think about that question a little bit. Advantage of going last. I think we are probably average in retention. I did as part of another proposal that I made this year that was tabled. I did a 25-year study on how many officers we've had. And over the past 25 years, we've averaged 4.5 officers hired per year. Now, some years it was 8 or 10. Some years it was only 1 or 2. When you look back over that, we have officers leave for just a wide variety of reasons, probably the least of which is retirement. Police officers rarely work their entire career and retire from the Urbana Police Department. We've had a couple recently, though. Chief Adair, of course, came from another agency, spent 12 years here, and Mike Metzler. Recently, we had an officer go to Chicago. We had an officer go to Las Vegas. Those types of things are tough to compete with. I do think we do a good job on the retention end because there's a lot of things you can do at the Urbana Police Department without being promoted. We have the investigation section, K-9, street crimes unit. Within the patrol division, there's field training officers, the Metro team, which is our SWAT team, bicycle officers, we have community outreach, risk watch, a lot of things officers can do while they're waiting for the opportunity to take a promotional test. And I think those types of things help keep a young officer especially's interest until the promotional opportunities come along. Employee retention, I think we're probably average. I talked to a lot of police chiefs throughout the state, certainly, and they're all battling the same thing that we are. Our number of having 46 working out of 55 is not that unusual because some people are in training. It takes such a long time to train a police officer. There's people on duty injury. There's people on non-duty injury. There's a lot of things that contribute to that. Did I miss a part of that?
So in the last couple of years, would you say we've lost about 4.5 people each year?
Well, over the past 25 years, we hire 4.5.
Right.
Now, some of our recent hires, because the past 2 years, the council upped us by 5 people.
Right.
So I've been in pretty good shape, without those. So,
okay, so in the last couple of years, we've lost. How
in
many
the past
have we
couple of years,
lost?
we've probably lost 6, 8 people.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right.
I think we probably better wrap this up. It's 10:30. Unless there's some department that's desperately waiting to give their budget here. But you can think about retention and come back next time. Okay, there being no further business. Oh, Danielle.
I just want to make an announcement. I wanted to announce that Brandon Bowersox is the proud father of a 5-day-old baby boy whose name is Garrett Allen Bowersox Johnson, and he arrived Wednesday morning healthy, and so he and his partner Kevin are now both fathers of little Garrett.
So,
well, talk to me, and I have tons of baby pictures. We can sit for hours.
Well, Brandon, I always tell people you never know what true exhaustion is until you bring a baby home from the hospital. Anyway, congratulations. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned.